call the city council, 1 minute, please. Okay, take care of something. Call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Present.
Here.
Whitman.
Here.
Steelgrave. Here. Vining.
Excused.
Germaini. Here. Mayor Clark.
Present. So we have 4 items at least listed on the work session for this evening, and I know that Mr. Pastu, you have staff here as well, but do you need any introduction? If not, we'll move right into it.
Yep, I was just going to ask Mr. Cochran to review the proposed sign ordinance for city council.
Good evening. Would it be an issue if we had Matt Vanasacker go first on residential strategy?
If I may, Your Honor, I think if we could do that. I thought about that earlier today and forgot about it, so.
My computer decided to update itself
Oh,
when
okay.
I got down here and it's still loading, so. Anyway,
Yeah, sure. Updates
Okay.
are always good.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, we invited Matt to come this evening. As you know, Matt recently joined the staff just over a month ago as the Deputy Director for Economic and Community Development and Neighborhood Services Coordinator. And one of the first priorities that we identified, as it's one of the top priorities of City Council and one we've been talking about for some time, including with the establishment of Matt's position, was working on the residential housing strategy. So it's something Matt, and I know he's been working with Vince on, so I thought it would be a good opportunity for Matt to come and update City Council on the progress that's been made and where we're at on that right now. So, Matt?
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to come and provide an update on this. As Mark indicated, this was an item that came up during the February 27th work session when you all were going over goals and objectives for the year. That was coincidentally my first meeting that I got to attend as a citizen at that point, not fully on staff until March 15th. So this is my 2-month anniversary with the city. Happy to be here. It's been great so far. I just want to really quick give, residential housing is so important. There's a reason why it was included in your goals and objectives, and it's been an area of focus for me ever since I came on board 2 months ago. Fortunately, I've been able to work with both Mark and Vince on kind of guiding me through conversations up to this point that council's had, and to see if we can put this into a comprehensive strategy. As part of that, research started on day one, looking at other municipalities. What are they doing? What are plans? What do they look like? What encompasses a solid, sound plan? Coincidentally, Dearborn is also running through this process at the same time. So we've been in touch with them as well to see if we can garner any insights. Looked at a variety of plans and came up with a proposed list of deliverables. The first, analyze housing market and identify needs. The second, review existing policy and define objectives. That would consist of city ordinances, zoning, and zoning maps. Develop a comprehensive approach to filling gaps that we see in housing. First and foremost, you identify the gaps, and then how are we going to address those within our own policy. Identify sites for new housing developments, a number of infill lots that we have as the city, a number of target residential developments that we're eyeing. But then also, what other sites are we missing? Are there areas that there are gaps that exist? Number 5, develop an implementation plan with targeted action items. And I think that's really the key focus. You hear oftentimes about the plans that won't sit on the shelf, the plans that'll be acted on. So that's exactly what we're working on with this proposal. Identify potential housing incentives. There's a number of new incentives that are coming out at both the state and federal level. So how can we tap into those? A number of them have income constraints, but then there's all others that do not. So how do we tap into all that? Establish metrics so that we're able to track success and failure in implementation of our housing plan. And then lastly, recommend a communication, public input, and transparency plan. So we put all of this together. We formally published an RFP on last Tuesday, the 9th of May. We're holding a pre-RFP teleconference via Zoom on this coming Thursday to answer any questions of firms and agencies that be looking to assist us on this journey, with ultimate submittal of the plans for June 12th. So that's just kind of a high level overview of where we're sitting today, and it's a very exciting project. I'm really looking forward to it. Vince, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
High
Or
points of what the RFQ contains, so.
excellent.
I think that, the due date for it is June 12th, you said, and so
Yep.
after reviews, interviews, you're probably looking at early, the first meeting in July, potentially second meeting, depending on the complexities where council can award at that time.
Yeah. I think the other key thing to note, and something that was included in the RFP, is that both the state and county are running parallel housing strategies and housing studies at this point in time. Obviously, updating our 2017 market analysis is the primary goal of this, but how can we pair that with a comprehensive strategy? State's strategy also has 8 key objectives and points, but theirs are more so ideals, whereas wanted to make sure that ours were actions and the like. So, great. Awesome.
See if there's any questions from council for Matt at this time. I'll just comment, I appreciate the review, and I know that we've had some conversations as a council on this previously. In some of the items on here, I think we've done some of the collection of the data, like infill and some other things, but yet having that review, whether it be with the market confirmation of needs, addressing the gaps, and then putting that all together will at least give a roadmap for the council. So, it was the way the county was doing theirs as well, and it'd be interesting to see how they kind of, match or don't match, which, there's different needs across the city and the county.
Yep. And the county's also using Sharon Woods, Land Use USA, as part of a team with OHM Advisors and CIB planning. And Sharon Woods, as you know, did our 2017 analysis as well. So, great.
Any other questions or thoughts? Andrew?
You had mentioned the 8 key objectives that was it the state or the county laid out?
Yeah, so there's 8 key objectives that the state of Michigan has laid out in their plan as well. I was fortunate enough to attend their kickoff meeting for our region in Ann Arbor, the end of March. It was, I think, one of my first weeks here, so got to kind of get a scope and a feel for that. Community Action Agency in Jackson is leading the regional kind of planning process, but we indicated that we would like to be heavily involved in any discussions there as well.
Just to be appraised of.
Yep, appraised of what the
what's
state,
going on elsewhere.
kind of running, just kind of seeing where theirs is coming in at, anything that we can kind of garner from their plan as well.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And did MISHDA set those objectives, or how was that determined?
Yeah, Mitch just set those objectives. Yep.
Okay. So after we select a consultant to move forward with, what's the process look like from there?
I would estimate probably 3 months of analysis to be done. All in the while, just keep in mind we are, kind of analyzing our own ordinances, zoning, et cetera, right now, just to see is there anything that we're doing today that's prohibiting development from happening or new types of housing from happening, and then pairing that obviously with the market analysis, I think will be key.
And is our objective to mirror what they're doing, or is there going to be some determination on?
No, I think we'll have our own plan, but I think the key thing, and I think the language I used in the RFP was just that whoever we choose, be mindful of these plans that are running simultaneously to ours.
There's other people around here who are trying to solve the same issues as we are.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thanks, Matt. Look
Thank you
forward
so
to-
much.
look forward to
Appreciate
moving
it.
Forward. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for allowing us to change the order of the show here on a whim. So now moving into the 2023 sign ordinance update. I'll never forget, I don't think, when I started in this current position and we went to the Planning Commission and we went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and Vince introduced me and what my responsibilities were going to be, stood right here, addressed the board, and the board said, in particular, one member, Mr. Bill Kipps, first day on the job said, well, if you can update this sign ordinance, you've succeeded in your job and you can go ahead and retire. So while I'm not retiring, I'm happy to say that over the past year or so, we've taken a comprehensive look at our sign ordinance, much like we did the zoning ordinance back from 2018 to 2020. I'll say this one, we haven't encountered quite as many hiccups as we did with that, but with the goal of making it a lot more user-friendly, bringing it up to date. The last time the sign ordinance was updated, I think, was 15, 20 years ago. And it read, if you ever looked at it, it much read and presented itself like a piece of legislation or an act of Congress. Not very user-friendly, not very helpful to look at. And so when we worked with MKSK on this project, we asked them to mirror the format a little bit to look like our zoning code. And so I'm pleased tonight to give you an overview. Last week at the Planning Commission, we presented an overview to the Planning Commission as well. And then I'm not going through the full ordinance this evening. That was included in your agenda packet, and we've got the first reading on the agenda later on tonight during the regular meeting. But the first step that we took probably about 6 to 7 months ago was formed a task force. That was made up of myself, Matt Vanasacker, Caitlin McBriarty, Lauren Bennis, our building official and zoning administrator. Particularly key for this conversation was our esteemed attorney, Matt Buds, given all the legal challenges that come with sign ordinance and trying to regulating signs in light of First Amendment freedom of speech, case law, and other statutes that have come down over the years. Bill Kipp, since he opened his mouth at the Zoning Board of Appeals, we asked him if he would serve on the committee and help us work on this, and he provided a lot of really great insight, very helpful. And then we also thought it was helpful to include J.R. Hoopenjans with Fast Signs to hear from the industry. What is up and coming? What are you hearing from customers? What is on the horizon when it comes to the sign industry that we should be cognizant of, that you're getting a lot of requests for, that you're seeing other municipalities and businesses are working on to feed into this process. And so I appreciate everybody's willingness, participation, and there were a lot of lengthy discussions about some very in the weeds discussions around several different items. But we held the kickoff meeting, MKSK. We asked the task force to take a look at what are some different signs across the city that we need to look at, possibly tightening up some regulation and oversight on. And then MKSK also went across the city and did their own tour and visited the different areas of the city to look at what is the current situation looking like? What are they seeing that other communities are doing that we could possibly look at addressing in our new sign ordinance? And then we had a series of multiple meetings. I think what we're going through tonight is probably the 6th or 7th draft that we're presenting for final adoption and approval. But we feel like we've gotten it as far as we possibly can. In a meeting earlier today, I quoted my former boss, Congressman Dingell, when he said that the last piece of perfect legislation ever passed came off a mountain etched onto 2 stone tablets. We know after we update this sign ordinance, much like the zoning ordinance, you'll see some amendments on that later this evening, that there's going to be constant changes that we have to make sure that we're staying up to speed and abreast on. And so we're committing to that as well as part of this update. So the update itself, I think, high-level overview, we reorganized all of the sections. Like I said previously, it was one long piece of text document. We organized it a lot more user-friendly, a lot more reader-friendly. We did look at additional sign requirements for each type of sign in each category, as well as specific sign regulations and sections. There were a lot of definitions that were out of date that we need to update. Either they no longer exist or were no longer pertinent, or there were new definitions that we had to look at. we added a lot more graphics. If you ever saw the old sign ordinance, it looked like somebody used a dot matrix printer and hand drew all the graphics. These are a lot more crisp, easier to see and understand and clear. And then we also, as I mentioned earlier, we made sure that this ordinance is compatible with all the other laws, ordinances, and statutes that are on the book. Our new zoning code, we made sure that if there were inconsistencies, and I'll give a shout out to Caitlin McBriarty, who I think knows the zoning code like the back of her hand from writing that thing so many times. There were many examples where she said, well, it's this way in the zoning code, and so we made sure it was consistent in the sign ordinance. Looking at judicial precedents, state and federal laws, making sure that the language was consistent. And then the sign map as well. You'll see later on in the presentation that we updated all the different zones, made sure that we were representing consistency where we needed to. So I mentioned we updated all the definitions section. This is first leading into the sign ordinance. Previously, with each of the definitions, there were standards listed with each of the definitions. We broke those off into another chapter, just like we did with the zoning ordinance, where you see a permitted use, and then there's a number after it where you refer to that section to get all the regulations and standards for it. It makes it a lot easier to navigate back and forth rather than try and digest it as you go. And so, like I said, we updated a lot of the definitions, and you'll see those as you move through the document. One of the things I think we've had a lot of conversation about is murals. Mural signs are still prohibited in the zoning code or the sign ordinance. However, we are making the exception for mural signs that are 9 square feet or less. We thought that those are pretty unimpactful. Again, they have to meet the historic district requirements, but the 9 square feet, if you've been to the Tim Hortons on South Monroe Street recently, when you come in their door to the left, there's a mural that's sort of unique to the community, community pride. And so that's actually treated as a sign mural and was permitted. And so think of a 3x3 piece of art on a building. Separately, if it's not a sign, a mural sign, which is painted exterior on a sign as defined in the ordinance, painted on the exterior building wall, ground, or structure, we're creating a separate ordinance related to public art and murals. And so that will be coming before you soon. But the only change in terms of mural signs was allowing something 9 square feet or less, as long as it meets, again, the historic district requirements where applicable. Exempt temporary and prohibited signs. There was a lot of discussion. As a city, we are not allowed to regulate content on a sign due to First Amendment rights, due to different case law. Mr. Buds, feel free to hop in here. But we can't regulate the copy that is on a sign due to those First Amendment rights. But what we can regulate are things like the size, the location of them, what they're made of, the construction materials, and the duration that the signs are put out. And so we really cleaned up a lot of language before the sign ordinance talked about garage sale signs, yard sale signs, real estate signs, political signs. All of those, you wouldn't know they're a garage sale sign unless you read the copy. Same with the yard sale, same with political signs, same with real estate signs. And so we really treat all temporary signs in one category based on how they're constructed, not based on the content that's actually on the sign itself. Prohibited signs, we updated the language on those. Things like the flashing neon lights that go around a window, we do prohibit those based on different standards. And then exterior string lights with the exception of holiday lighting and outdoor seating areas. So again, thinking about those chasing lights, the LED lights that are supposed to draw attention to a sign that's within a window, prohibiting those because they are very distracting and they can also mimic law enforcement. There's one area in the city I know I drive at night and I can always see it in my rearview mirror and I think I'm getting pulled over, but it's really just those LED rope lights that are chasing. And so we tightened up the language and the regulations surrounding those as well. Enforcement penalties, permit requirements, and updated zoning code references. Basically making sure everything is clear and consistent. With enforcement, we added some folks in proper titles, such as the zoning administrator or designee, the economic and community development director or designee. Those titles were out of date in the previous zoning code. And then just tightening up the language regarding municipal civil infractions for violations. Cease of use requirements and abandoned sign requirements. So making sure if a sign is abandoned that it's cleared out. So think of a business closes and they leave the sign existing. The business is no longer there. The building may no longer be there, but the sign is left there. Making sure that those are cleaned up and giving a pretty prompt timeline for removing those. Blank panel installations, when you think about a multi-tenant commercial building and they've got multi-tenant signs on a monument sign. Oftentimes if a business goes out of business, they'll just flip it around and you'll still be able to see the business name in reverse. We added some language in there that you have to replace that with a blank panel that matches the structure and construction of the sign. I think before it may have said white, but now we know that signs come in a lot of different colors, making sure that it doesn't particularly stand out or become unsightful, that it matches the character of the property and the sign itself. Construction design standards, making sure that those are in line with the different construction codes. Illumination requirements, the types of illumination that is permitted and the intensity of them. An example in the downtown central business district is allowing halo lighting, still prohibiting those backlit plastic box signs that have always been prohibited in downtown. But think about pinpoint lettering, kind of like the City Hall monument sign, where letters are up there and it's just a halo backlighting it. Very classy, still allowing the gooseneck lights in the downtown as well as anywhere across the city. Updating the setback requirements, location graphics, mostly graphics in this area, and you'll see those as we move to the presentation. And then sign area and height requirements we added into the general sign requirements and the standards, as opposed to, again, removing those out of the definition where it made it seem cumbersome and uncomfortable to follow. So this is an example of some of the graphics that we've included and updated. Each of the specific sign types, so whether it's a monument, whether it's an electronic message board, a canopy, a ground sign, all of them have the same sort of visual representation that you see before you. There's the definition in section A. Number 1, it talks about the illumination standards for that specific type of sign. It talks about the sign area and the size of lettering and the size of the canopy and maintenance of the canopy. You'll see in sign the box 5 at the bottom, you'll see each of the zones listed and then how this sign is either prohibited or regulated or what the requirements are in that specific zone. So if I look at the map and I'm in zone A and I want to put a monument sign in, I can flip the monument sign. See, I'm in zone A, see here that it's prohibited, just for an example. Number 3 is the location in terms of projecting out into the right-of-way area, the setback from the street curb, and then number 4 is the height requirements and the different height regulations for each sign type. And then you'll see the examples corresponding to each of those letters in the graphic to the right. Billboards was updated to be only permitted along I-75. We also included some billboard maintenance requirement language. This is an area where you may see where now more and more, instead of painting onto billboards, they're using vinyl graphics or wallpaper type application. Sometimes those blow off, they're hanging off, they blow off completely. You see an old business that's no longer there, or you see the raw sort of buildup of old billboards over time. We're requiring now that billboard maintenance, if a copy is expired, they take the vinyl off. It has to be a solid color surface or replaced with like a nonprofit ad or something of that sort. Structure requirements and standards, just bringing those in line with construction requirements, and illumination requirements and standards as well. So I think the big change here is previously, I think billboards were permitted along Telegraph Road. We also see some along the Dixie Highway corridor, and we're no longer permitting those or allowing them, only along I-75. Banners and feather flags was a big update. Now more and more, this is one thing that we noticed as a trend that needs to be addressed. A lot of businesses are now using these feather flags. If you think they're the flags or the banners that are out at the road, they're freestanding, they're shaped like a feather. That's why they're called feather flags. And businesses more and more are using those to supplement the signage that's permitted on the building. Oftentimes they're put in the wrong location in the right of way. They're left out, they obstruct the view, they become not maintained, unsightly. And also some businesses are, rather than putting a fixed sign on the building, they're actually just covering up the old sign with a banner and leaving that. Or they're leaving like a now open sign up for years after they've held their opening. And so we wanted to make sure that we've cleaned up some of the language related to this. Not that we're not allowing it anymore, but requiring, again, the regulation related to the time that's allowed. And so requiring a permit, free of charge. We're not charging for these permits. We are, again, not allowing them in the public right-of-way as they have often been found, although not permitted before. And then it's a length of time that you're allowed to have that banner up. I think we're putting it out for 2 weeks. These are meant to draw attention to special events, to sales, grand openings, things of that, and allowing 8 permits in a year. So that gives you about every couple weeks you're allowed to put a new banner. It has to be new. It can't be the same copy. And then also limiting the number that you're allowed to have in the frontage in front of your business. And so one thing that is exempt from this is grand openings, allowing grand opening signage for a new business because we want to welcome that. We want the public to know new businesses are opening in the city, limiting those to 30 days. And that does not count toward your 8 permits in a year. And so this is how other communities have sort of reined them in. Even driving around the city over the weekend, I was noticing more and more are putting them out at springtime, 5 or 6 in front of their business, but it's just the name of the business, supplementing, again, the sign that's on their wall. Electronic message signs are one thing that was significantly out of date in the previous zoning code. And so we've updated the sign zone requirements in terms of where they're permitted, the illumination and the brightness, the hours of operation. You're allowed to have it operating while your business is open, and then after the business closes in the evening or whatnot, overnight, you have to dim that down. It can't be so bright. And then the sign area requirements, the size of the electronic message sign, the number of times that the message is allowed to transition throughout a couple minute per minute period, and then again the location of them. But opening up, recognizing this is where the industry is going. No longer are businesses putting out one letter at a time like they were before, and the technology with electronic message center signs has really come a long way. And so making sure that we're trying to keep up with those regulations and standards as well. Historic signage standards. So in our historic districts, we've included language related to maintaining that we're ensuring the character and the integrity of the historic districts is maintained in the rules and regulations with the Secretary of Interior standards, as well as the city's own historic district regulations, and then including a review of the Historic District Commission as well for new signs in the historic areas. And then you'll notice here's the new sign map. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but I want to call attention to, in particular, this area, the downtown. We really made sure that the downtown sign district matches the DDA boundaries, so extending north down to Willow near the Farmers Market and south along the boundary districts of the Central Business District and the DDA district. Also, we looked at the Heritage Corridor as well as the Orchard East Master Plan. Both of those master plans called for identity, character signage, wayfinding, neighborhood identity. They were very much in concert with each other. And so we put those into one district as well for that cohesiveness and consistency. Telegraph Road on the western side of the city and extending that into the commercial industrial area that includes Cooper Street, and making sure that the regulations are consistent there. And then again, the I-75 corridor and the Dixie Highway corridor, you'll see here matches the same regulations as Zone B, the Telegraph Road area. And then toward the south end of the city, where La Pleasance, South Monroe Street, and Jones Avenue come together, making sure that that was appropriate as well, given the current uses in that area. So next steps, I know I talked a lot tonight, open to feedback as well. We're hoping after this review tonight to have City Council hold a public hearing on June 5th with adoption on June 19th. And then currently we're actually working right now on the murals and public art ordinance to be a companion with this ordinance adoption as well.
Looking at the map, I noticed it's Zone D, it says Central Business District. I was looking, right, D, right?
Yeah, the downtown area.
So I was looking for the map earlier and I just got distracted and I didn't get back to it. But do you know if that mirrors the DDA's designation of the Central Business District? I just didn't want to have there to be conflict. I think it's narrower in scope on the Central Business District, and the DDA district is longer than, because it goes all the way to Jones, and I see the separation between D and C.
Yep.
And then I'm just, so I'm just trying to, not to cause confusion for anybody, that when you say Central Business District, and somebody say, well, that's not in Central Business District.
Right.
By the DDA's, I'll just say plan downtown. So I didn't find it yet, but I'm just making a comment to it so we can look at that or look it over.
Yeah, we've got,
Go ahead,
can I address that point? So with that, this doesn't exactly mirror the DDA's boundaries, nor does it mirror the Central Business District zoning district, the difference between the two. What it does is it looks more at the central core downtown. We did expand it north with the DDA boundaries along Monroe Street. It doesn't go as far, I guess, south. I guess that would be southwest. It mostly encompasses the Monroe Street corridor and then the first, second, Front Street corridor.
Okay. Just only going
Commercial.
in, then it'll be the, I'll say the sign ordinance, Central Business District.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Zone D.
Okay,
Yeah.
D, exactly. Okay, next question I had, you'd made a comment and I had not seen it yet. The 9 square feet mural signs, I guess
Yeah.
that's what you said. And I looked through this, I missed that, but is there a number of those which can be applied to a building or a side of, or a wall?
Yeah, so the sign ordinance limits the number of total signs you can have at your business. Whether the mural signs would be treated as a wall sign, in addition to, with a limit from the road sign, the ground sign, and the wall sign.
Got it, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Andrew?
Yeah. So, first of all, it's quite a document. I'm glad that we're to this place at least. I can tell you candidly, Mr. Mayor, I have 2 pages of notes. I don't want to eat up the entire work session with this, but I'm happy to keep going if you would like me to, or if there's a different venue by which you'd like me to sit down and, but this is sort of our first crack at this. So
Right. So as it is a lot of a document, and as I say, I went through and trying to make just a couple brief notes for now, and then I think between now and the next public hearing will be some opportunities to provide feedback to the staff and share with council, because that way, otherwise, we may be thinking the same thing or not. So I'm looking to Vince to see if there are thoughts on it for tonight. Obviously, we have a couple more items, but we do want to go through
I think
this
there
too.
is some time to go through some of those. I think in part that's why we had it tonight. I mean, we still would like to schedule the public hearing, but there's still going to be time to make some changes if that's in fact the pleasure of the city council.
Yeah.
So, but if we know what they are, that would help.
Okay.
Council may have them on their list. So why don't you, I sit in a, how do I want to say this?
I want to be respectful of all my colleagues' time and not
Right.
eat up the entire meeting with this one item.
I mean, if it's down to the detail of a lettering or something, but say but if it's about a general a zone, a section, a type, I think that gets an idea of, if I guess start, go ahead, I'm just.
Let's
wasting
provide
time.
some general comments first. So we all knew that this is needed to be done for a while, and I think that you've established that during your introduction when we kick this thing off. Are there any egregious examples that you can think of right now of things like in the city that, like, this is bordering on blight, this is what we don't want in the city, these are signs that we think should be in violation that's currently out there?
Yeah, I think the abandoned sign, I think, is a large one that we paid attention to. I think the maintenance of signs, some that, the copy is faded, the colors are faded, the paint is chipping. That was part of that sign audit that we took a look at.
Okay.
Vacant building on East Front Street, I'll just say it. The red building that's got a
Yeah.
frame of a sign with no sign in it, but it still hangs outside the building.
Hortel Lanes is another one.
Yeah.
So there's two major parts that I see I'm missing. You did address one of them, which is the murals, and you expect that to come in a separate document. If we're introducing the sign ordinance at this meeting and it's on the agenda to be put up for a public hearing, and we expect the mural policy to pass at the same time, was my understanding of what you said? Please.
Probably
correct me.
not at the same time. The mural policy is going to be probably a couple months off yet as we're still developing that. So this is just pertaining to sign murals.
Gotcha. Which are those? Anything 9 square feet or less?
9 square feet or more, but it's a mural that's painted directly on a building that promotes a business, a location, a product, a service. Treated different from public art where it's more works of art than it is advertising.
Gotcha. The sign that you had that you spoke about inside, I think you said Tim Hortons.
Just outside on the outside wall. Yep.
Just on the outside wall. Okay. Do we make any? Do we distinguish between inside and outside of a building? If there's either a display case or if there's, like, you see a Taco Bell has an ad on the inside of the window advertising something, does this regulate those at all? Or are
So
those
we
totally
have
separate?
transparency requirements in the zoning code. So the sign talks about window signs, but you also have to look at the zoning code at the same time. If the window is covered, but it's covered with a sign, we also have storefront transparency requirements in the zoning code where you can't have more than X percentage of the window covered, period, whether it's a sign or painted on art or anything like that.
And for the case of display cases, because I know the city has one over on Washington that I'm rather fond of when we decide to use it.
The kiosk.
Does that count as a sign? Does that whole structure, or this is a display case? That's something totally separate and will be considered separately.
Yeah, that's separate. I don't know what we consider that, honestly.
That's a kiosk, I would think, but it's, I hate to say it, but though some of our zoning laws don't apply to us, so. But it's a public information piece too, as opposed to a commercial sign that, for a business. So, I mean, its purpose is fundamentally different.
So
That's going to be, in some ways, I mean, even with our park signs, I mean, depending on how you.
Park
put those-
signs and gateway signs, like the Welcome to Monroe monument signs that we're looking right now. Yeah.
So I just follow up to Andrews because I think over the weekend I happened to go by and I saw one of our newer businesses on Telegraph Road just off of M50 has decided, which the food pictures look great, but they cover every sign on the side of the building. So that would not be permissible, correct?
It would not. No.
Okay. As an example, because every window has a different picture of the type of food and which is being sold from that facility.
Yeah, that would violate, even though it's not advertising the business, it's more art, so to speak, but it still violates the zoning transparency requirement.
Certain percentage is only permissible, if I correct?
Correct, yeah.
30%, something?
Off the top of my head, I can't
I'm
remember,
guessing. Go ahead,
but it's in
Andrew.
there.
Would it matter if those signs are perforated? Because up close, sometimes there's 1,000 tiny holes in them. It wouldn't.
No.
No,
Would not be permissible under our current policy, and
correct.
considering the amount of fast food restaurants that we have on our Telegraph corridor, That's going to affect quite a few people. Gotcha. I do believe that we need to update the ordinance. There are portions of this ordinance, and I can get specific later, that I find are very restrictive. And I worry will be restrictive and will take activities that are currently understood to be standard practice and make them illegal. And I worry about that, and I worry about the extent to which we're going to be doing that all at once. That's a concern of mine. I know that the policy also references the historic district map. I looked within the Historic District Commission. I could not find a map. Could you roughly guide me to where the historic district overlay exists on the map in front of us?
There's a couple different historic districts. There's the one primarily you think of as downtown, but there's also a couple that are on the north side of Elm Avenue, on the north side of the river as well. Generally, those are more residential though, and we would only be looking at things like the temporary signs in that area. But for the historic district, it's generally the central business district area.
Okay.
There's a map. There are, I think DDA might have one of those, and Matt's got his hand up.
Overlays the blue.
Yeah, it's also in our GIS. There's a layer.
I knew it was. I didn't have 10 minutes to wait for it to load. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So as it stands, I have some concerns with the policy as it's been laid out. But I'd be happy to discuss in the future. But I don't know if I'm ready to move forward with it tonight. And hopefully I've made that clear.
Other comments? I guess I'll follow up because I think, while Andrew maybe correct, I think there are people that are not following the current zoning. And it's not because they haven't been told, they just continue to do so. So the volume grows when somebody has continued, even though, it's been taken down or whatever, and then it pops back up. So, and then others do the same. I think the Feather Banner is a great example of that. There's one place on Telegraph Road that has 4 of them out front, and they're all within the terrace area or the city-owned property. For 2 reasons, I don't think that's acceptable. I think it should, I do like the fact that we limited by time of an opening or an event or an activity. There's time and space in between they cannot be, but it can't be inside and on the city property. I like the fact that this isn't selecting on any type of business or type, but I see that the realty signs are being moved out into the city's terrace, and I think that's we absolutely understand why. It's more visible. You can see it from down the street, but if we allow that, then we have to pretty much allow every other type of sign within the city's terrace. So it's just got to be aligned to say that this is not where it can be placed. And I think we'll probably be sending communications out, I would hope, to certain, I know there's a place that's outside of town that always puts their signs out because they're selling townhouses and properties way out on M50. Mm-hmm. And they put them at the strategic locations because there's a lot of traffic. I understand that, but if you might as well try to ask it permission from the business owner and put it on their property versus the city terrace. So, I mean, you can collect signs by the dozens at times if to do so. So I think there is a communication plan at the front end as well.
Correct.
That this is recognized. And I don't think you have to send it to every one, but there's associations that are, they have meetings themselves. And obviously make ourselves available if we needed to have that conversation. So I guess I'll wait to see what the list might be of what likes or dislikes are. Like I said, I've gone through it quickly, but I'll be looking at it as well. And tonight, Mr. Pastou, it's on the agenda later to move it so we can have the public hearing and potential action by council in the future.
First reading and public hearing, which is standard for our, any ordinance adoption. The point is, are you ready for that? That's what part of the reason for this work session item is to discuss it. So
I guess I'll follow up. I like the format. I think that from what we've had previously, as soon as I started reading, I would say it's easier to follow, and it took me have to get my mind around the structure of the page. And so once I went through it, saw the zones, saw it is. I like the fact there's letters that while you're reading something, you can go over to the drawing to see that it's where they're talking about that, or where we see we'll find it, and then as it goes through the zones as well. So.
Yeah, and part of it, I know some of the sections, it may seem like it's new, like calling out feather flags, but those were actually prohibited in the prior ordinance too. They just weren't called out as that. They were called out as temporary signs. And so while they're new in that text in this ordinance, they're currently prohibited as well. Part of it too, yes, we're planning to do a communication rollout, and certainly some of this is going to be new information. We're not looking to issue citations right away, much like we do with all of our other ordinances. Have communication and dialogue, working with the communications department to say, this ordinance changed. Did you know, these are the rules around garage sale signs, something like that, to make sure that we're not going forward as enforcement police right out the get-go, but working with businesses, owners, residents, and all the above as well, the stakeholders.
Other questions or comments for tonight? Go ahead, Andrew.
One point of clarity in the document.
Yeah.
Let's turn this back on. When it has the visuals, and gee, I love the visuals. I think it makes things a lot easier. Going back to the mayor's point of how the document is laid out and readability, it has 2 or 3 different kinds of lettering, designating like a numbering system on the same piece of paper, and sometimes that gets confusing. I see zone A, and then I see subpoint A, and then I see section like a with a circle around it, but that's actually relating to the graphic. Zone A relates to the map, and the subpoint is a totally different thing. None of those A's on that paper have anything to do with one another. It just gets confusing. So I don't know if we want to incorporate a Roman numeral numbering system just as a point of clarity. Regarding permits, I know that it said the permitting will be done in accordance with the clerk's office, similar to how our transient vendor licenses work. Is there permitting for signage right now? Does that extend to temporary signs as well? Or is it just when signs are erected? And I believe that you had said the permits are given, but there is no fee for it.
Yeah, that's for the banners and the feather flags for special event signs. Right now, as permits work, if you're erecting a permanent sign, you have to get a permit through the building department. And most of the sign companies do that automatically. We never have a huge issue with people getting permanent signs without a permit. For temporary signs and things like that, if I'm putting a sign in my yard, it's election season, I'm putting 6 signs in my front yard, I don't need a permit for that, nor are we requiring a permit. So the only permitting change that we propose in the new ordinance is particularly for the banner flags and the feather flag, or the banners and feather flags.
Previously unregulated material, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You say unregulated or?
They were previously unregulated. Now we're saying, okay, these are the rules around this.
Prohibited,
Prohibited
but
before.
we didn't have permits or anything for banners and things like that before.
Gotcha.
Also for special events, we are, like if I'm having a special event at Munson Park or something like that, St. Mary's Park, still having some regulations around those, but not as strict, like having them out for 2 weeks before the event, and they have to be down within 24 hours after the event or something like that.
Yeah.
Feedback's helpful, I'll say.
Anything else? You can go over. I think we have a couple more items to go through though, so.
Are there, yeah, well, this was exactly my fear. So we can move on to the next thing. And I'll follow up with Director Cochran.
You want these now?
Oh, the next 2 items go, because we can always come back to it.
Okay.
Thanks. Next item is, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
A presentation regarding the proposed bike lanes on North Macomb. Patrick, if you want to come up, just give City Council a little background on the traffic and safety hearing that was held and why, and what the recommendation that came out of that. The other thing with it is, we handed out a letter from Florence Buchanan with the bicycle and pedestrian Trail Advisory Committee based on their meeting last week. So, Patrick?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. I didn't really prepare a visual for this one. I can hook up, if you'd like, and show you the area and on programming time. But one of the things that we did, of course, in the engineering department is we looked through our bicycle and trails plan and saw that the North Macomb Street corridor was called out for on-street bike lanes in the areas that the width would accommodate it. And that would be from north of Grove to where we're going to end the resurfacing, which is at the city line, kind of where Country Club Circle and Charlotte Arms, whatever that's known as today. That's where our section of the road ends. So we had programmed that as being reduced from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, because right now it's a 36-foot wide street with a center turn lane. And when I presented that to the state of Michigan as part of the review process, they said you need to have a public meeting because you're making a lane change, and that's part of the federal project process. So we did have that meeting. We scheduled it for the Mayor's Traffic Committee in April, and we notified, as we typically would do for something like this, notified the adjacent residents, businesses. They like you to try to get as much stakeholder involvement as you can, and I had identified previously that the Bicycle and Trails Plan itself had been a significant stakeholder document. So we kind of used that. We was going to use that as the stakeholders for the bicycle non-motorized residents, individuals that wanted to use that. Traffic Committee reviewed testimony from a number of residents that came in response to that direct invitation, and I attached in your packets the number of people that we did directly notify. We had 2 written letters and 7 or 8, somewhere in there, citizens that commented. All were opposed to the change, citing traffic volumes, difficulty turning into the hospital. The hospital was kind of the center of that, but then there were also some of the residents concerned about their own neighborhoods. Lindswood Estates had a number of the residents that were there. The night prior to that, we actually had the Trails Committee, our bicycle and pedestrian panel committee meeting, and I had briefed them on the project, much as I'm doing with you tonight. They were very much in favor of moving forward with it as called out on the bicycle and pedestrian plan. So the way I understand it, the federal requirements don't require us to come to a specific conclusion. We need to have a meeting and solicit feedback and consider that as part of the planning process. But my understanding is we're not under any obligation to either make the conversion to 2 lanes with bike lanes or leave it 3 lanes. So the difficulty the engineering department has now is that we have 2 of our stakeholder advisory committees that have weighed in on this, and frankly, we were looking for a little bit of direction, which I know we can't provide specifically at a work session, but we wanted to get your feedback because one way or the other, we want to finalize this so we can get this in the bidding queue and make sure that we're ready to go first thing next spring. So, Mr. Pastor, have I
think it's in
omitted
its
anything?
simplest form is, as he said at the end, that there is a conflict between 2 advisory committees, one which includes, a plan to convert that to bike lanes. So Mr. Lewis needs direction when he starts working on the design. Are you going to put the bike lanes in there from a design standpoint, or the Sharrows, as I understand the recommendation that came out of the committee at their April 26th meeting, the Traffic and Safety Committee. So really, it's a function of giving Mr. Lewis some direction as to what you have. You did receive a letter, as I said, from Florence Buchanan, a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail Advisory Committee. They did discuss it at their meeting last Wednesday, I believe. So,
Any comments? Brian?
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe it is a request on the citizens to have the bicycle lanes. I've heard it myself as well, and I think it would be a good change over there in North Macomb. At least give it a shot, see how it looks. The only thing I want to make sure of, because I know a lot of times when we're dealing with these city streets that have the sewers, the man covers, whatever, sometimes those get a little bit like a divot. And that can be a little concerning when you have bicycle traffic going over it. So that might be a little concerning. Just make sure that when we do design it, that we have those properly elevated or level with the street itself. But other than that, I think it'd be a great thing for the city to start up, because I think it is a want, not a want, but a need. And it is wanted by a majority of the residents in the city of Monroe.
So when we hit the city line and we go into Frenchtown, is this a county-wide project? 'Cause I know we also have a plan for the county. So will it continue in Frenchtown?
Well, we still have to pursue that a little bit further, because it is the Monroe County Road Commission section of roadway, and it actually does narrow down a bit to 32 feet when you get outside of the city limits. It starts to taper already north of Maywood. You can still have effective bike lanes in there. They're going to be a little bit narrower than the section in the city. It's not our call to make, but we will press them once we have a decision on this. We would press them to see if they'd be willing to coordinate with that as well. And I believe that there would be some momentum to do that. Ultimately, we can't force it. So if they decide not to stripe it that way, they would terminate like the bike lanes would at the south end of the project at Grove into a sharrow, where we'd mark that a little more aggressively to show that, okay, the bike lanes are ending, and south of Grove, we only have 24 feet of width, so it just will not work based on the pavement width that we have. When we resurfaced that in 2017, we considered putting on-street bike lanes, but I'll just say the carnage due to tree removal would have been significant. That section, as you get closer to the older part of the city, the trees are closer, larger, and it would have been unpalatable, I think, on balance. So that would be the same treatment if they were to terminate north of the city line into the sharrows as it would be on the south end, which would terminate into sharrows only.
The comments? So, Vince, are you looking for something? I have a comment, but is this something you're looking for this evening to be amended to the agenda, or just trying to get?
Oh, no action tonight,
Okay.
but it is just to bring awareness to council, but ultimately, at some point, council's going to have to weigh in as to what direction to give Mr. Lewis for the design of the project, because as he said, it will affect, some of the conversation with the road commission as you proceed further north as to, with that aspect of the project. And so, I'll just throw this out there. Just think in terms, okay, if council decided to go sharrows, and I'm not recommending that one way or the other, but that pretty much makes the road commission's decisions pretty much easier afterwards. But if you go with, the bike lanes as proposed in the park and pedestrian trail plan, well, then they've got to consider how they're going to approach it, again, given the road geometrics that they're constrained with as well. So, but clearly, what I'm asking for, you got the conflict. We need, some direction from council to Mr. Lewis going forward when they get to the design.
That helps. So I'll speak because I do sit on the traffic committee, so I thought I could give a review from that discussion. And I know that there's someone here from the Trails Committee also. And of course, I think Vince or Pat, somebody would have been in attendance, as you already said. So the traffic committee took the information, and when it first received, there was a couple comments, and that was it. But then there was a representative of one of the residential areas in the association that were opposed. So as we look through this, and I took the Trails plan with me because I think it's a great document that we should be following. I'll start there. So then the designation for North Macomb Street is a midterm project. There's short-term, midterm, long-term. And that's because there's probably more time and more things to be done. I don't know why it's midterm. I have my thoughts with the hospital being there, and maybe they're waiting for the transition to the hospital. I'm just thinking because I haven't read it. So there's different year timeframes that are designated here. What's mid, short, and long? I don't have that page open, so I don't know what it is. I know it's like 1 to 3, and then 4 to 8 or 10, and beyond that is long term. So I thought I took that in consideration when we had the conversation, and I think any bike lanes that we do, any other opportunities, it's going to take education. So we don't have it up there, but the rendering, I'll say south of where the bike lanes are going to be share lanes. They're going to, by that means, shared lanes, which we all know bikes have a right to the road, and we need to share the road with the bike. So when there's more space, you can put bike lanes, and it's separated. So we'll go from a share marking to a lane, and then on the other side, at a certain point, it would go back to I think a share, if I'm not mistaken, where it narrows down. So that was part of the consideration as well of, should we just mark it all as a share to get people accommodated? So my comment at the end of that was, with those that were there, I said, understand, I read this as a midterm. I don't know what will happen at the hospital. I don't know the time frame on that. I don't think anybody here knows. But on the other hand, that it will change. It will change to bike lanes, because that's what the plan says in the midterm. So I think the committee, the fact sheet indicates here, the traffic committee meeting provided comment ahead of time, was universally opposed to the change. But when you go to the minute says, it was moved and supported not to adopt the recommendation, but endorsed shared bicycle pavement markings as part of the upcoming paving project. So while they didn't support the bike lane, they did support starting the process with shared lanes. So it was kind of a step process. And I think that no matter which we do, is going to be an education not only for the users, but probably more so for the drivers, to understand what I think it's green. Cheryl lanes, right, are usually green.
Well,
But whatever it is, doesn't matter. Whatever color it is.
communities will stripe the bike lanes totally green. That's a fairly extensive
The
marking.
idea is it shows the visual along with the use. I just came back from a travel, and theirs were like 12 feet wide, and it was interesting. But they have the space. We don't. So that's why we have this before us today. It's the only thing that I think, Vince, as you said, I think the only thing is we have is the minutes that were presented for action, but not necessarily this item on the agenda. So we may have some opportunity. Go ahead.
In fact, that's why it's structured the way it was. Get the minutes. A lot of times there's action items that come out of traffic and safety, and I asked Mr. Lewis to pull that from, any kind of traffic control order so that you could have this dialogue before considering any action. Just approve the minutes. You know what they are. You can have another discussion at a later date regarding this. So
I think the trails plan is great. I think it really sets out a process of where we're going, what we should be doing for incorporating bike lanes and non-motorized, but there's also a schedule to that we all know we're not going to do it all at once, because one, the cost, and plus the ability to do that. And there's probably 2 or 3 other projects that the Trails Committee is moving forward on that I think will come soon, and we'll see if there's if approved from SEMCOG, a planning assistance grant with the city in Monroe Township regarding La Pleasance. And how quickly that may come, not this year, but the year to come, because if the grants and the planning grant's done, then we have to design and figure that. And I don't say that's probably not as, maybe a little more challenging in some respects, but maybe not as challenging for me, of putting the lanes and the extended lanes in, because it's not even there at all. So.
Yeah.
And it's a narrow road to begin with.
Your Honor, I wanted to point out too that just because this change is part of the federal process, I don't want anybody thinking we can't make a change. I mean, like, typically we'll have to, if we decide we're not going to make any change, or we are going to make any change, we're going to need to stick with that until the paperwork of the project's closed out. That's just, so it might be 1 or 2 years that we'd have to stick with a decision, whatever it is. So I just wanted to put that out there too, because I don't want you thinking that if the feds pay for us to resurface this, that we're stuck with the same configuration for 20 years. Typically, it's just until the project's closed out, which usually can take a year or so after construction.
So my last comment, I'll see if there's others. So over the weekend, I was at an event, and one of the persons involved in this whole process wanted to have a conversation about it, and simply said, well, if that's the case, why don't you just put the turn lane at the Linwood's estate, if they're concerned with their ability to pull in. I'm thinking, well, then we're adding another dynamic to this. But so that's why we're having the conversation today. Is it all the same? Is it all the same one way or the other? But there's no question the community has an appetite for non-motorized. We know there's those that do not have it. But understanding the bikes have the ability to be in the road, so we should try to do that in the best, at least minimally marking, and at the best marked on there as a lane. And even better, that is where we have the space to do a separated bike lane, which we can't do everywhere. I'll go to the end and come back so everybody has a chance. Andrew?
Yeah, first let me say, I think bike lanes are wonderful. I think that in this case, we are seeing two wonderful things compete against each other. I think Mr. Lewis laid out one of those contexts very nicely. We like our trees here in the city of Monroe. Bike lanes are also pretty cool, and we'd like to have those, but there's only so much space on the road, and we also want to provide for the accessibility of vehicles. So do you widen the road, take out the trees, and make more space for parking in bike lanes, or you, with semi-permeable pavements, you have the same issue if you're going to do limestone or gravel approaching a boat launch or a natural pathway. That's wonderful, but now you have to consider ADA accessibility. So there's good things that compete against each other. So I think it's a good conversation to have. I would say that this decision probably would be a lot easier to make after the hospital transitioned rather than before, but I understand the time constraints with the road reconstruction. I think at a minimum, we should probably do Sharrows. I'm certainly in agreement with the mayor with that. And then we can certainly have the conversation to expand that to bike lanes as well. One of the things that I was very cognizant of when I served on the Trail Advisory Committee that came up with the master plan in reviewing the survey results was the level of usage for non-recreational, non-motorized activity. Because I think that really, at the end of the day, is the thing that alleviates motorized traffic off of the roads and replaces it with bicycles or scooters or walking or what have you. And so if the network that we're building and the infrastructure that we're putting down isn't having a corresponding effect on a transition to a non-motorized system, then we have to support the same level of infrastructure that we have now for our motorized traffic, and then on top of that, build this second level of infrastructure that's all going to be supplementary, isn't going to be substitutionary at all. And so I want to track the increased utilization of non-motorized methodologies of transportation. And I think that the survey that we did initially gives us a very nice baseline, but this is going to be a number that I want to pay attention to over the years, and as we begin developing this sort of infrastructure, to see if that's increasing, to see if general usage is increasing. But I would hate to put in the infrastructure and then not have anyone use it. I also think it's very important to keep in mind why people aren't going to use it. Is it because that the infrastructure we put in, if it's Sharrows, is that still too intimidating? Is that not sufficient enough? Or if we do put in a bike lane on a road that may not have the space for it, in addition to the other amenities that we want to have on that street, does it become too narrow to be of any use anyway? So, I mean, these are all things that we're going to have to consider as we move forward, but I just want to share my thoughts with the rest of council so that we're able to keep those in mind.
Right?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there anything that we have to put on when signage wise, as far as being shared, like, shared lanes?
We can't, I mean, let's put it this way. I could theoretically, if I wanted to, just let a contract say, I'm going to put Sharrows on all the roads that are on this map, which I don't have displayed for you, but all the places that we have called out for Sharrows. That doesn't require any regulatory action by the council, and it doesn't require anything as part of the federal project. I could do that right now. I wouldn't, because we're going to resurface the road right away, so why waste the paint? But all of that is fine. Realistically, the main reason we're here is just because we've got to make a decision on the lane configuration, so I can tell MDOT what we're doing and get this rolling.
The reason I point that out is just for differentiation between
Sure.
shared and regular bike lanes. How is somebody to know that that is an actual shared bike lane?
Typically, we'll put signs supplementing the pavement markings that are on the
You're
pavement.
definitely going to know it's a bike lane if you install bike lanes, but
Yeah.
you're not if it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, mostly where we have bike lanes now are places where they're longer runs. North Custer, which we converted from, which I may mention, we did convert from 3 to 2 lanes. And I'm not aware of any major issues on that. Although you do have mostly left turns going eastbound, so there's really only one direction you're turning left in there. And when they terminate, we basically just have a bike lane ends, because for the most part, those either terminate on Dixie Highway, the one side terminates onto a sidewalk, or at the south end at Winchester Street, it just kind of terminates in an intersection, we just say bike lane ends. But you could have some There's other share the road signs that are typically used where the bike lanes terminate and they terminate into sharrows. And those are all things that we can easily sign once we do it. We would sign to supplement the markings because the markings are not always clearly visible, during nighttime hours, rain, things like that.
Other things for you. Do we have any accident statistics based on having shared lanes versus bike lanes?
In the city, no. I'm sure there are. I know there are studies because I've seen them in other communities. I think from the literature I've seen, what's lacking is that, I'll say, small scale. You've got a place like Vancouver that has got hundreds of studies, but then they also have dedicated bike signals and all sorts of stuff. It's kind of hard to draw that same conclusion here where our set is limited of experience. And frankly, we just don't, because of our low speeds and relatively low traffic, we just don't have very many crashes in general. So drawing statistical patterns is very difficult here. And we'd have to have a lot more of these on street before we could even start to draw those conclusions. I think, generally speaking, I think most people would say that it's probably a little safer to have dedicated bike lanes because you do have that separation. But to what degree, and I couldn't tell you, and I won't speculate.
One other thing, is there anything special signage-wise or et cetera for the driveways that go, the ongoing driveways onto Macomb? Like for instance, Mercy is probably the biggest driveway there going in and out, the two drives that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Anything special we have to have there to notify, especially if they have any kind of, trees or brush blocking the view?
Well, theoretically, it's not any different than what they've got now, except they're turning and looking for bikes instead of cars. But
Correct.
We haven't really looked at how we would deal with the private side signage because we don't have the property necessary to force them to put up a sign on their side. So I guess the short answer is no. But at a couple of those key places, I'm sure we could work with the hospital in particular and some of the common driveways of the larger, residential complexes. Almost every driveway over there serves multiple buildings. So we would see what we could do if there were any known visibility obstructions and try to look and work with the property owner to have some kind of sign. But I don't know whether it would say watch for bikes or something of that
I think
nature.
that entrance, also Lemerond is another one. Is that included in that or not? That is included in that.
Yeah, that's in the project. It would be in the
Lemerond
project.
is a pretty busy street going into the hospital. So it might be something to think about as far as that goes there
Yeah,
too.
sure.
So,
All good points.
okay.
Other comments? Michelle?
Having ridden my bike on Macomb Street, I am in favor of the bike lanes. I think it would be a lot safer for the bikers. However, I am concerned about the hospital as well. So that's something to weigh out, but I support the process. That's all.
Okay. Vince?
Anything else to add, other than we'll put it on a future agenda here for council
Sure.
to provide Mr. Lewis with some direction?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is the last piece of the puzzle, I think, and then we're ready to program it. So we're not in danger yet of losing federal funds or anything like that. But if it drifts into July, I'll have to. Yeah, I probably need an answer in June to make sure we don't run the risk of them running out of funds.
Very good. Thanks. Vince, I think we have one more item. I think we can get through.
Mr. Lewis can pull up. We've been working with Monroe County regarding trying to soften up our plaza area here. And so, certainly with the LET project completed last year, looking at some alternatives. The county's got some issues, I think, with some of the runoff and the velocity that comes from that. And so some of that incorporates some of the design. So I'm going to let Patrick walk through this real quick because we only got a few minutes and give you a sense of, roughly what the conceptual layout is we're looking at.
Sure. I'll try not to get lost in engineering speak here about grades and cross slopes and all that other fun stuff, but that's been the biggest challenge. As you know, it's a relatively steep between the city and county plaza. So just give you a little orientation. I'm going to back out of this just a hair here. And to the north here is City Hall, where you can see my cursor moving. The doorway is right here. And then over here is the Lake Erie Transit Center up in the corner here, where their doorway would be at that point. Down here at the bottom left is the main entrance to the county courthouse. To your right is the City Hall parking lot, where we just reconstructed that parking lot last year, and we've got a couple of new slabs of concrete along that. So instead of having one big wide concrete area there, we're looking at doing 2 planters that would be in the middle, and you'd still have a decent pathways. You'd have 12-foot pathway on either side of those planters, coming from City Hall down to the courthouse. Most of the existing walls and things would remain. We're not looking to try to make a wholesale structural change. So you have over here where my cursor is, you've got 4 benches. Those would stay. We're looking to add a bench because those 4 benches there are not ADA compliant because the ramp is steeper than 2%, which does not allow for companion seating. So we would put in 1 ADA compliant bench, probably up near City Hall. There's also a bench near the parking lot down here. That also would not be technically compliant with companion seating, although it does have a 2% slope or flatter all the way around, so you could actually access it. But we're, again, trying to keep the cost down and avoid cutting into some of the structural elements there. The planters would have some spillways. That's these little boxes here. And the design for those would then allow some of the water, the runoff, to be captured before it gets all the way down to the courthouse door. That's been a concern of our county executive, Mike Pasonic, because if the water just is allowed to run, it runs from City Hall up toward the door here. So, and it's not shown on this drawing because it was put back in, but there's a trench drain that goes across. We are going to rebuild that just as another fail-safe, but we're trying to divert as much of that into these planters as possible. There's another small trench drain down here on the west side. We're going to keep that as well. And then we're adding a catch basin near his doorway, entrance to the county courthouse there. To the very south end where our new pay station is, we're going to be taking some of that concrete out, putting a planter box in there as well, just to kind of, again, soften this the best we can. I'm going to go down to the landscaping plan here. I could show you all kinds of details, but time does not allow that, so you don't need to see details of my manholes, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so these planter boxes will have, and these will be concrete curbs, 8-inch high curbs around those, with the spillways being kind of cut open like a 2-inch slot underneath, and that'll allow us to plow around it, and we're not chunking out the curb every time we hit that. So we have some smaller arborvitaes and, don't shoot the messenger, ginkgos, but they will be non-producing ginkgos. So I said, if I see one berry coming out of those things, I'm going out there with a hatchet myself. But you can specify those as non-fruit producing ginkgos, so they do have 2 of those called out for the planter boxes there. And then we do have some decorative fencing where the wall is by the county courthouse, and that will allow sort of some screening from some of the HVAC, electrical equipment, things we have on that side. What else?
I think we just a little bit about some additional green area up by City Hall there.
Yep, so this would be, if this is the main doorway here, where one of the support posts is now, that would be a new planter area in there. That would not be curbed because of the relative elevations that you have, and then the fact that the glass on the building goes all the way down. I'm looking out over here, but I know the audience can't see what I'm pointing at, but it would be out front here by City Hall. And then the other post support column would have another planter curb around that with some other landscaping to kind of, again, soften that so it doesn't look like the institutional columns are the predominant feature.
And I think part of it is to allow still some assembly activities underneath the canopy here at the entrance. So, I know in the past we've had some events out there, and so I think that that would still be possible. We may skinny up a couple of areas there to allow for that, but by and large, still be able to kind of give it a little more color, and yet at the same time keep its functionality for that purpose.
And it's not shown on this drawing because we've got different sheets for everything, but we are calling out a bike rack. So that was one thing that's been by popular demand. So we'll have a bench and a bike rack near City Hall.
That was my question, because I see Mr. Fales just left,
Yes.
and he's number 1 on his list for the courtyard. And we do have those that ride their bikes into this courtyard, either City Hall or at the county building, and chain them to the light pole or something else. And I think just by having it doesn't have to be right in the center. It just has to be in a place that's where they're not riding their bikes through there. So there's a place, find the appropriate place for a couple bike rides would be great.
If I may just also, if you pull down a little bit further, we've got 4 trees that are along just the wall outside here. You'll see that one of them is going to be removed. Mr. Masonic and I've had some discussion. He prefers them to come down because there are maintenance problems related to some of the drain there. And certainly I understand it. And they're kind of funny trees, how they're really
Half a
wedged
tree.
in there, half trees. But I also, had suggested that we still need to kind of break up some of that massing of the building there, so it's just not just a big wall. And so we'll play that one. I think, long-term, play it by ear, whether you need those trees to stay there going forward. But we did take one out and planted it with some arborvitae in there, so.
Yep. And the goal on this, we're still trying to get this built this year. I know the county was taking the lead on this initially, and then I got involved when it got to the point where we were going to bid this. So we're doing our best to try to get this bid for an award potentially in early July, if possible. We've got a little bit of work to do, but that would be our goal. And I think we worked out 50-50 cost split between the city and the county. So Mr. Pastu and I, before he departs us for good here, we'll work out the funding on that one, and along with Mr. Sell, and we'll be ready to present that to you. But the engineering department would manage the project with some technical landscaping assistance, in particular from Manick and Smith. Lucy Fortin was the primary project manager on their behalf. So I think that covers everything. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Comments, questions? Michelle?
It's not about the center court. Are we going to do anything with the brick around City Hall as part of this project, or is it separate?
Not as part of this project, just because of the different trades you've got involved, but I know Mr. Cack, it's in the CIP. So,
Thank you.
If I might, just purposely have kind of probably held back a little bit, knowing we were going to be doing First Street. And so that would probably, once that's completed, the timing would be right to replace some of those bricks.
we've had a lot of work. The last 2 years, we've had a lot of work going on downtown. We've had to really stage everything carefully because otherwise we're all on top of each other. So,
Yep.
Other comments? Yes, Michelle?
Room in this plan to include a public notice board that would be visible from the outside at the main entrance. We currently don't have that. If our entrance is
Yeah.
closed, you
On
can't.
Macomb, yeah.
You can't access the notices, and since we closed the Macomb Street door, we have that little board, but
Yeah.
it's not really. So just something if we could.
Yeah, that's something I
Take a
think we
look
could
at
talk
it.
with Lucy about how we could
Okay.
put, a notice board, and we'll get back with you.
yeah,
That's a good idea.
I don't think that'd be a problem at all. So, no, thank you. I appreciate mentioning. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a great idea.
Any final comments? We have about 7 minutes, so. All right. Clerk LeBoy, anything further? Okay. All right. I think we're good with this time. Close the work session. We have about 6 minutes. Thank you. Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Felder.
Here.
Whitman. Here. Stilgrave. Here.
Excused?
Germaine.
Here.
Present. Ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Guide our working together. Give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the peace and welfare of the residents of this community.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is approval of the regular agenda.
First, I'll see Mr. Pastu. Any adjustments?
No other changes, Your Honor.
And Councilwoman Germaine, I think you have something for regarding the, well, I guess we'll do that under the, waiting for the consent. I'm sorry, wait till the consent agenda. I'm ahead of myself here. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Councilman Lamore?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd just like to make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave to approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Whitman. Yes. Stilgrave. Yes. Germaine.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $1,576,256.78, 1576256.78.
Now we're at the consent agenda. 80 items from the consent agenda. Council wishes to have pulled for further discussion. Councilwoman Germaine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item number 4024, approval of minutes. We need to make a correction to that second paragraph. It says 208 East 2nd Street when it should be 208 East 7th Street.
So you want to have these pulled and then put under council action with the correction?
Correct.
Okay. Any other, so that's one item. Any other items on the consent agenda council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda. Any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda. Yes, sir? No, just, we'll pull the item, and then when it comes up later, you have the opportunity to speak on it. You're just asking to have it pulled for the discussion, is that correct? Very good, thank you. Other items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, motion, Councilman Felder?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out as amended, and resolutions adopted.
It's a motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda not pulled for further discussion be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Whitman. Yes. Stilgrave. Yes. Germaine.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. It's item 4039, Cody Presentation 2023 Friend of Conservation Award Presentation.
Mr. Leroy? Egan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Barry Leroy, Director of Water and Wastewater for the City of Monroe, and also Commission on Environment, Water Quality. I'm the Vice Chair, and
Brian Egan, Chair of the Commission on Environment, Water Quality. Mayor, City Council, it is our privilege to present to you the Monroe Conservation District Friends of Conservation Award that Commission on Environment received on March 9th of this year for our work in the environment. And we also have our updated new River Raisin Legacy Project field guide. So I'd like to present them to you if I may.
Yes, please do. To the clerk, and then we'll make sure that we receive the guides as well as take an opportunity to view the award. Congratulations, and I'll hear some more about this, please.
Sure. So yeah, the award was originally started in 1970, and then they renamed it later and started looking at working with other partners and individuals that are dedicated to water quality and preservation of local ecosystems and habitat. So, but with that, also tonight, the council just awarded is accepting the grants for the river. One of them is the river cleanup, which is going to be August 12th. And we were able to present a lot of outreach at the Earth Day event back in April. So, Brian, you got any other follow-up with that?
Yeah, the Earth Day event was very successful. We passed out about 200 of the field guides and a bunch of other literature, including the river cleanup. But also, we'd like to take this time on behalf of the Commission on Environment. We'd like to thank Vince Pastou for all the support and work that you've done with Commission on the Environment. So thank you and good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions? Or?
Questions for the chairman and vice chair on Cody? I'm sure there'll be some additional comments later from council members. I may have some, I think others might as well, but congratulations, obviously, work well done, and I'm glad you brought the date up now. It's never too early to give the community the awareness of when the river cleanup's gonna be, August 12th. So it's down the calendar, but always a great event attended by the community, and a lot of support, so look forward to that. Thank you very much, and congratulations again. Yes, yay. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4054, 2023 Planting Seeds Murals Program Artist Portfolios.
Mr.
Mayor,
Pastou?
I'm going to have Mr. Cochran, just go through this with council, and he's got the next 4 items on the council action items afterwards, so don't grab a seat, Mark.
Honorable Mayor, Council, Mark Cochran, Economic and Community Development Director. A couple weeks ago, we presented on the 2023 Planting Seeds Mural Program, proposed in the city to continue off of last year's successful mural program. And I believe it was Councilwoman Vining at that time had asked if City Council could get a preview of the different artists' work, the different portfolios, and the artists that had been selected for the various sites. And so in this evening's council packet, that was provided by Woody Hoffer and the Planting Seeds for your information.
So, any questions or comments for Mr. Cochran? I'm looking for my sheet here. What to do with it? Do you have something further, or?
No,
Okay.
not on that item.
Okay. I'm looking. I had it here, and Mark and I chatted. So I did see the sheet regarding the all the information and looking at all the variety of types of mural art that's been done. It was interesting to see the different styles and designs. Some were scenery, some were floral, some were animal, some were, I'll say persons or abstract. So it'll be interesting as we move forward. I see the style. I did. We chatted earlier because as we look at some of those that are persons, but they're not persons. I'll say of the community, and as Mr. Cochran looks at his notes as well. But in the importance of that, I think, is that while we might have displays for the visual of a community and representation of our community as a whole, if we start to get into, I'll say, murals that are persons of the community, or I'll say could be celebrities or along that lines, then it starts to potentially blend into what the naming policy. You can have naming just by visual versus naming of words. So I don't see that in the renderings, but I just bring that up just for awareness that as we get these opportunities for murals and continue with the policy of as it's looked through, and I know that those things are looked at. Because if you start, let's say there's an item that's in the community that's associated to somebody, and then you put that person's picture there in a mural, you're almost like then lending into the naming of that by the visual versus the naming of lettering. Just something I think it gets kind of close, and I just see it not get that close, but I'm not necessarily opposed to having, a mural of community that represents community. And I think that's kind of what we're That's kind of what I saw. So I'm just making sure I'm seeing what you're presenting, I guess.
Yep, and I know a couple of the different artists and the depictions for some of the different sites have portraits of, it appears, individuals. In the conversations with Woody and the different artists that have been selected for this year's program, none of them are supposed to be identifiable individuals. So they're not portraits of any actual people, whether in the community or likewise, just I guess, artistic expressions or artistic pieces of work that came from the artist's head alone and not inspired by any actual individual person.
I did like the sheet that you included there. It had all the artists' names and also with there, it listed what the locations were that we would see where those murals will be going. So that's obviously within the council packet for any to see. So I appreciate that. Any other comments for Mr. Cochran on this item? So clerk, I guess if there's not, the next item, please.
The next item is under council action, item 4047, consideration of proposed ordinance 23-002 to amend section 2.14 of chapter 720 zoning code.
I know we just had a work session that talked about this section, Mr. Pastu.
I'll have Mr. Cochran introduce the item, but it is pertaining to the IW zoning district, this item.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had indicated during the work session that, the zoning code as it was adopted in December 2020 was hardly perfect, but it was a huge improvement from the zoning book that had been part of the city ordinance before. Over the past 3 years since this document has been adopted, we've put it into practice. And as we put things into practice, we notice a lot of deficiencies or a lot of opportunities to improve it. I'll say if you come into our department office, there's a whiteboard that greets you, in addition to Caitlin, of course. But on the left side of that board is a very long list of all the items that need to be addressed and changed in the zoning code. And so we're looking at how we're going to do that without bringing each one of these to the Planning Commission and the City Council individually, probably in chunks, or like one update per quarter that addresses multiple different items. So tonight is the first one that we've been working on. It's an item that we've been approached by multiple realtors, multiple businesses who have looked at the IW district. Primarily, if you look at the IW map, it is the Huber Drive corridor on the west side of the city between Elm and the former Lazy Boy property. This area is unique because on the east side of the street, it's primarily it's IW, the uses that are identified and permitted or special uses in the IW district. On the other side, it's residential. And so I remember when we were working on this chapter, very cognizant of any uses across the street, making sure that they're not too disruptive to the residential area in the part of the neighborhood on the west side. And so the two uses that we're proposing to add into the zoning code are personal services. This includes things like fitness centers, gyms, pet grooming, barbershops, salons, uses such as those. And then also nursing, physical rehabilitation, and convalescent centers. The reason that we're proposing both of these is because a couple of the uses are very compatible to each other. In personal services, things like gyms and fitness centers are also compatible to rehabilitation centers. And so we're proposing to add these as special uses, not as permitted uses. So if there is an applicant who wants to open a business or relocate or locate within the IW district, that would have to go before the Planning Commission for review. It wouldn't trigger an automatic permissive use that the remainder of the uses allow. But when we looked at adding these uses, obviously we look at what are the impacts if we do this. And looking at those two, personal services, nursing, physical rehab, and convalescent, compared to what's already allowed to be there, like warehousing, logistics, distribution, things like that, we view them as less intensive. This really isn't going to be driving a whole lot of semi-traffic. Most of the uses in personal services and the other are more by appointment only. Not necessarily large and open to the public, but the special use requirement would trigger a further review by the Planning Commission. These uses would still have to meet the standards that are identified later in the zoning code in terms of parking, site requirements, building size, minimum setbacks, and things of that sort. And looking at those, they would be applicable and not conflicting in this district. So last week at the Planning Commission, we presented this, and I believe in your packet this evening was a transmission from the Planning Commission recommending approval. And so we're looking to schedule the public hearing and consider adoption of this zoning code amendment. First of many to come, I'll say.
So the action this evening is to place it on the floor first reading and set the second hearing, correct?
Yep.
Any questions from council on this item? Okay. Councilman Lamore?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that proposed ordinance 23-002 be placed on the floor for its first reading and set the public hearing and second reading on Monday, June 5th, 2023.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stalgrave on item 4047, proposed ordinance 23-002, to be placed on the floor for its first reading and set the public hearing as stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Yes. Whitman?
Yes.
Stilgrave? Yes. Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 23-002, Chapter 720, Section 2.14, Subsection B, Zoning IW Warehouse District, Permitted and Special Uses. An ordinance to amend and restate Section 2.14 of Chapter 720, Zoning of the Code of the City of Monroe.
Thank you. Next item.
The next item is 4055. Consideration of proposed ordinance 23-003, sign ordinance amendment.
Thank you. This was a longer conversation at our work session as well. For those that weren't able to attend, can obviously catch that and on the replay there. Mr. Pastou?
Again, similar to the last action of the council, as we've proposed a first reading and scheduling of the signed ordinance, with the understanding, even after you've held a public hearing, if you're not ready for adoption, there are amendments that can be made prior to its adoption. This at least gets the process in order to go forward at some point. So,
Mr. Cochran? Any
I have nothing further than what I already added during the work session this evening.
I'll just say, for those that are here now, that there was a discussion regarding some, the sign ordinance amendment. It's lengthy. There's a lot of information in there, updates and uses, and it really designates in a pattern that's, I think, easier to understand than what we currently have. But as Mr. Pastou said, the action item is what it is. Any comments from council? Any questions? Councilman Felder?
Yes. I did have a brief and what I thought was a very productive meeting during the break with the city attorney and Director Cochran. I believe that I still have a couple of questions. We might have a misunderstanding of the reading. I just want to go over their interpretation, my interpretation, and iron some of those out. I think that's certainly achievable, but would like some more time to engage with the policy. This meeting is the first time we've seen it. So if we could table this and put it on for the next meeting, I would appreciate that, to give us some time to engage with it.
So the June 5th meeting is the next meeting. I don't have my calendar in front of me. Is that 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay. So by discussion, is that with the staff or is it with council? Or?
I believe in this case it would be with staff, unless it was council's discretion to have another work session on them.
So that's so the Councilman Felder is asking for to be tabled, I think is the word he used. Right? Yep. For more time before it goes forward in the first reading. And I think, as Mr. Pastou said, as we know, we've had these before. First reading simply gets the process started. Normally it's the next meeting, which is usually 2 weeks. Actually, we have 3 weeks. I think there's time for, if I'll leave it to council members, I'll give my view. I think that there's time. I know that I have a couple questions, and I know that I'll be able to have those responses that as it comes back to the second reading. And there's still an opportunity to have public hearing to get the public's input. And there's the opportunity, if council's not satisfied at that point, to take similar action that's been stated here. I'd like to get the process started myself because I think there's sufficient time to get some answers, but I don't know what all the questions may be. I thought the discussion was healthy. I thought there was obviously some more details that some council members may have. So I'll leave it, see if there's other comments from council. Ms. Pastor, do you have a comment?
If I may, Your Honor, my preference obviously would be to have the first reading tonight and the public hearing. And in part, I mean, I think it gives you a 3-week period for Mr. Felder to have his conversation with Mr. Cochran and Buds to resolve any of those. But also, it'll also give an opportunity for the public to comment before City Council takes any action. So I think that may be the most efficient way to get to where you're would like toward an adoption. And if you remember in Mr. Cochran's presentation, he contemplated June 19th, although we're proposing the next day, the 20th, for adoption. So normally we do a first reading and second, or public hearing and second reading on these, but nothing says that you have to do the second reading on the 5th, but at least you get the public's input before making some other potential changes as well.
So I have a question for that because I think there may be some public that may want to weigh in as they kind of review that. Where best is the place in which they can review the proposed zoning? I'm sorry, zoning, the sign ordinance amendment.
So before the public hearing, whenever that is scheduled for, we'll have it on the website as well. And typically what we'll do is if we have documents for public comment is to leave a printed copy in the clerk's office for folks to review it as well if they don't want to go to the website and download it.
But it is available there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just so if there's going to be some thoughts from the input from the public, they know where to obtain that. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Lamore, I thought your hand was up before.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just had a couple of questions here. Knowing that this is going to be something that's going to be mostly put in front of our businesses in Monroe, is there a way that we could, notify them to know, and maybe this would help them as well, to get acclimated with what the ordinance will be or could be, and give them an opportunity to maybe put their spin on it, and come back to us with that acknowledgement of some sort to at least give us a little bit more guidance, because they're the ones that are really going to be the ones that are going to have to be using this more so than the public.
Yeah, I think, the public notice is for everybody to comment on, whether you're
Right.
residential, commercial, or other industrial or otherwise. But I would say we've put a lot of work into crafting the document. And so I think the next 5 weeks of having public comment available starting tomorrow through June 19th or June 20th, if that's the case. But then also, just like we have the zoning code tonight making changes, if as we're putting this thing into practice and we notice there needs to be changes made, we can sort of tweak it a little bit as we go and implement it as well.
My suggestion was just something to get it out to them so that they can see it somehow, something that, hey, if you want to take a look at this, here's your fair chance to look at it. By the way, it's on the website. Please go to the website, look at it. I mean, is there a way of contacting our businesses, at least to give them heads up that we're trying to make changes to this, or at least solidify something, put it in stone and be ready to go with it?
Yeah, we don't have a master list of every business in the city, so to speak, but I think we could do some targeted like social media ads, things like, or social media promotions. We're updating the sign ordinance. Now's your time over the next 5 weeks of public comment to have your say.
I
Sure.
think that'd be great if we could.
Yeah.
Just something to give a little bit more notice.
Use of the communications director in that area would be great. I know that this week is the Downtown Development Authority meeting. I know we have contact with the Downtown Monroe Business Network. While that's not all the businesses, they not mean the commercial side of it or the Telegraph Road Corridor or Dixie. But I think marketing out the information is opportunity for to the attention to the businesses. And of course, you have your other committee with the Telegraph Improvement Authority. I just start thinking there's ways which members that can also meet their other business members as well to make sure that that outreach is there.
Mm-hmm.
Comments? Oh, Councilman Felder. Or no?
Sure.
Okay, I'll come back to
Just briefly, And if we do hear back and have comments from the businesses and we would like to amend the ordinance based on those comments that we receive, is there action that we could take on the 5th or the 20th to move to push this back a little bit so that we'd have additional time to make those changes?
Based on what comes between then and the 5th, that there's opportunity to extend the time before. I'm looking at Mr. Budge, I think there is, because, you know, when the 5th comes around, we could take the action as stated after the second reading, or council could take a motion to say that there's some additional information that even the staff may be presenting from what comes in. And I would, as we know, that if information comes in and sent to the clerk's office, it also becomes part of the record as well as not just through the staff. So the answer, I guess, would be yes. Mr. Buds?
So I will agree with that generally. Another way to go about this is to set the public hearing for Monday, June 5th, not hold the first reading tonight, schedule the first reading for the 5th, which would then give you the opportunity to hear any of the comments, have any of the further discussion, and then plan on the second reading on it would be then the 20th. That's an option for an alternative if that makes people feel I'll say more appropriate under the circumstances. But there's nothing that would stop changes between the first and second reading. There's also nothing that stops having the public hearing in the first reading and then moving to the second reading after that. All of those are acceptable from a procedural perspective.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Miller, do you have another comment?
No, I was just going to make a motion.
Okay, well, I'll see if there's any other comments. Well, Councilman Felder, you asked first. If not, I'll move along.
I just think it's a very interesting point that Attorney Buds makes of separating this into the two separate issues of the reading and then the public hearing. Because the public hearing, I think that City Manager Pastu makes a very good point. We probably want to start now, no matter what, and then, you know, perhaps schedule the readings for a later date. But if, again, if this is a deadline that we can push not only today but later, then, you know, that's an option as well.
I'm open to a motion.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that proposed ordinance 23-003 be placed on the floor for its first reading and set the public hearing and second reading on Monday, June 5th, 2023.
There's a motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini, on item 4055, proposed ordinance 23-003, the sign ordinance amendment for the first reading and the public hearing set as stated. Any other comments? Oh, clerk, go ahead.
So the proposal is for the first reading to be this evening? Am I understanding that?
Yes.
Okay.
Other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Germaini? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Proposed, ordinance 23-003, Chapter 580 signage. An ordinance to amend Chapter 580 signage ordinance of the City of Monroe of the Code of the City of Monroe.
Thank you. Next item, please.
The next item is 4065, resolution approving purchase agreements for properties along South Telegraph Road.
Mr. Cochran.
So, Honorable Mayor, City Council, this item is actually a very exciting development for multiple reasons. In 2019, the Telegraph Road Corridor Development Plan was completed thanks to a planning grant that we received from SIMCOG to work with our partners at the then Monroe County Business Development Corporation, Frenchtown Township, and Monroe Township to look at the Telegraph Road corridor and look at what are some improvements that we can make to that corridor for development, for safety of all users, for aesthetics, and multiple different components that were identified in the development plan. Subsequently, following that, the council established a Corridor Improvement Authority, which is a new TIF district that, much like the Downtown Development Authority, was established to capture taxes to make those improvements and begin implementing that plan. Our Telegraph Road Corridor Development Plan and the authority governs or really has oversight in the area from Greenfield Avenue near the Lazy Boy property to the north to the intersection of Telegraph and 7th Street to the south. When that development plan was established in 2019, there were multiple sites that were identified as key catalytic catalyst development sites along the corridor. In the city of Monroe, one of those was Lazy Boy, and we see the activity and the improvements that are happening there. Another was the Nortel Lane site. And then the other was the old Bolodrome, as it's affectionately and commonly referred to. This is the properties from 609 to 619 South Telegraph Road. The Bolodrome, it's a series of buildings. The Bolodrome is on the north side, that building. The former Clausen Dance Studio is in the middle. And then Duffy Towing is the southernmost property. There were a couple things that transpired at the end of last year. First, the building department issued a notice of order and demolition for the Clausen Dance Studio as a result of its deteriorating condition. Following that conversation, the property owner contacted the city through Attorney Buds. Said they weren't going to contest the demolition order and would offer the property to the city of Monroe for $1. Also, following that, we were approached, City Manager Pasteur and I, by the owner of Duffy's Towing. We were given the heads up that the business was going to sell after just under 90 years of that family-owned business. The next generation decided they didn't want to be in the towing business. And so the Duffys were selling the business separately and then also selling the building. And they got wind that this property was identified as one of the key development sites along the corridor by the city and wanted to know if the city had an interest in purchasing the site to help move the development and the Telegraph Road corridor along. Over the next several months, City Manager Pasteur and I had been in discussion with the family and the business owners negotiating a possible purchase. Also at the same time, the owners of the former Bolodrome contacted the city. We had some concern about the condition of that structure, the blighted condition with that property as well. And much like the conversation with Duffy Towing, they also asked if the city would be interested in acquiring it to help move forward the development of this entire area. And so over the past several months, those negotiations and discussions have been ongoing. On the screen, I just wanted to highlight, this was a page out of the Telegraph Road Corridor Improvement Plan that looked at what this intersection could look like. It's strategic in the sense that it's a southern gateway into the city along South Telegraph Road. A lot of the properties surrounding the area have seen some improvement. Leroy Door and Sales with Closet Creations has made a lot of aesthetic and interior improvements to their building on the west side of the street. Don Larson's Bar has made some improvements on that property. The new Jazzy Steak Burger with the old Monroe Diner, Family Dollar moving into the vacant Rite Aid. And so we've seen some attention being paid to this area of the city. And I think one really strong positive way is to work on this complex of buildings. This site does include 9 different parcels. The Bolodrome property also has 2 vacant properties to the north. The Duffy Towing Building has 2 vacant properties on the east side of Stone Street that have been used for vehicle storage. They're conforming residential properties that can be put back into productive use to complete and further that residential area in that neighborhood. And then, of course, the 3 buildings. But you'll see sort of the vision that was driven by, in the corridor improvement plan, looking at that triangle space at the Stone Telegraph Road intersection. You'll see a depiction on the screen. Really looking at an enhancing and more inviting gateway into the city with some outdoor green space. If the Duffy Towing Building can be reused for some sort of public restaurant, a brewery, something like that has been a possible use that's been called out with outdoor seating, a nice aesthetic sign, welcome to the city. You'll also notice that there's a bus stop that's identified at this location as well as some pedestrian improvements. And so as a result of this, and after some conversation, I know we've talked about this with City Council in the past, the appetite to pursue this further. And so in the past week, we've come to agreements with all 3 of the property owners. First, to purchase the 3 Duffy Towing parcels at the south end and the 2 on Stone Street for $225,000. The Clausen Dance Studio for $1. And the Bolodrome property for $220,000 for a total of $445,001. We also added in the resolution another $15,000 in contingency plus to cover the closing costs on top of that as well. Also recognizing the past historical uses of these sites, the old Bolodrome used to be an auto repair station, we found out. Of course, with Duffy being the nature of the business that they were in, we did do some environmental due diligence. There is some continued environmental assessments that need to be done on all three of the properties. And we've got a proposal from AKT Peerless to finish that with the phase 1, the phase 2, some additional soil sampling, and the BEA, the baseline environmental assessment, with that totaling just under $29,000, adding up to $32,000, including contingency. Almost done. So the unique interest with the Telegraph Road Corridor Improvement Authority is this would be a project that they can move forward, that they can manage. The Corridor Improvement Authority by state law does have the authority to acquire, manage, and redevelop and possibly lease out property for revenue generating opportunities. So we would propose that the city complete the purchase. We would eventually demolish the old Bolodrome and the Clausen Dance Studio due to their condition, and the complementary use that can be for parking, outdoor space, outdoor seating on the north end of that building, and then repurpose the Duffy Towing, and that could be a project the Corridor Improvement Authority could then finance, move forward, and then market for redevelopment and turn around and sell. It's not the idea that the city would hold on to all of these properties long-term, but just provide the shot in the arm, the injection of opportunity to move this forward in a better state than what it is now, and begin, just as we did at the north end with the Lazy Boy site, do so at the south end at the Bolodrome, Duffy, and Clausen Dance Studio site. So you've got a resolution before you this evening authorizing the purchase of all 9 parcels, as well as the revised resolution that I believe was handed out before the meeting to include the additional funding for the environmental assessment work with AKT Peerless.
Thank you, Mark. Quick question for the city attorney. I'll take questions or comments from the council. So the revised resolution, which is highlighted within the red, and then I'm sure the clerk will see that gets put in with the record if so approved by the council. So others that may have already reviewed understand what that comes to be with the, I'll say, amended resolution. Any comments from council? Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. The environmental assessment, will that have any bearing on the purchase?
No, so in the conversation that I had late last week with AKT Peerless, they've already done a pseudo mini phase 1 to look at the historical uses. None of them have shown to be so significant that it would cause a lot of detriment and roadblocks to redevelopment.
Like I'm talking about like fuel tanks, anything
Yep.
like that?
Yeah, there's no underground storage tanks that have been identified or releases, thankfully.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from council? So as I look at the rendering that's on the screen there, since we've had the lengthy conversations throughout the night about this, I see the blue lanes on the side, which is a separated non-motorized pathway, which is excellent. And even on the other side, the walkway with a nice large pathway. So that's great to see. Thanks. If there's no other comments, a motion would be in order regarding item 4065 and the amended resolution. I think you can, that's a good question. As we have our motion to adopt, I think it would have to be with the amended resolution, correct, Mr. Buds? Yes. So just with the amended resolution. Thank you. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll make a motion for the amended resolution approving purchase agreements for properties along South Telegraph Road. Move to adopt the resolution approving 3 purchase agreements for properties along South Telegraph Road.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Germaini, supported by Councilman Lamore, regarding item 4065, the amended resolution approving the purchase agreements for the properties on South Telegraph as stated and presented. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Steelgrave? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4053, consideration of license agreement with Andre Satilli.
Mr. Cochran.
This should be the last time you hear from me this evening, but what you see on the screen in front of you is the north end of Munson Park. The yellow line is typically the road. At the bottom of the sheet, it's the soccer fields in the Mesa Soccer Complex. And so there's a gentleman, Mr. Andre Satilli, who owns the property, the vacant farmland property that you can see to the right of the blue dashed line, who owns those parcels and also farms those parcels. He's actually building a new residence at the northern end of this property, but consequently, as a result of the conversations we've been having with him about construction of his new residential property, was talking about how he actually accesses and farms the acreage to the east of Munson Park. The north end is all of our trails, so they're unimproved roads, they're grass pathways if you've been out there. Oftentimes, particularly in the early spring season, they're underwater, they're wet, especially in the lowlands. And so we've been having conversations with Mr. Satilli probably over the past 6 to 8 months or so about a designated route that he should follow. He has been historically by practice driving through Munson Park on the paved route till he gets to the north end of the soccer field and then proceeds, as you see highlighted in yellow. However, if there's times when those yellow routes are unavailable or impassable or impeded significantly due to weather conditions, there's been times where he may follow the blue lines to access and get across to his property. The purpose of this discussion and having the agreement with him is these routes we view are better than traversing his farm equipment through the residential neighborhood, through Frenchman's Bend and the surrounding neighborhood across the streets or across the residential streets, leaving dirt and debris resulting from leaving the farm field. And so we've got an agreement before City Council this evening that we've come to an agreement with Mr. Satilli that the yellow path will be his designated route, that he will only have permission to use the blue routes when, like I said, those are backup if the main primary routes are deteriorated and impassable. He would let us know. But also the other part to this is we want to have the routes designated because Parks is going to be posting signs for users of the trails because there are a lot of people who walk, bike, and otherwise use the nature trails to the north. We want them to be aware that farm equipment may be traversing that during the farming season, and that's the other reason we wanted the designated routes. And so tonight, we're asking City Council to approve this agreement for Mr. Satilli to the east. I will say there's also the farmer to the west who farms the property around the airport, and we're working on a similar agreement with him as well for his access.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from council? So, Mark, as I look at this, as you said, Mr. Satilli's building a house at the northern end. Will he be accessing through the residential to his house?
Yeah, for his house, he's building a new driveway
Right.
Off the end of St. Antoine. It's actually already constructed partially, going up to his residence. This is only for the farming purposes.
I'm sure council may have been by there. Is that little stub street that goes east and west?
This one?
No, further up. Right
here?
Below there.
Here.
No, in between.
Oh, here.
Right there.
Yes.
It doesn't really show because I think when this was done, it wasn't really a street, but it is now. And it does go all the way through. That's where the access has currently been because you could see the real deterioration in not only in his property, but what's being left on the cement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's currently accessible that way. Will there be a gate there? I mean, I could understand when there may be an emergency that they may be calling stuff. Others that may get there and then all of a sudden decide to go out there. So it's just because there's posts there currently.
Yeah, that is where he's accessing his residential lot.
Okay, that was my question. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I know, I understand. So, okay. Other comments or questions? If not, the items before us for the license agreement. Councilwoman Stalgrave.
I'll make that motion, Your Honor. Move to approve the license agreement with Mr. Andre Satilli to provide access through Munson Park to his adjacent properties for the purposes of farming and authorize the mayor and the clerk treasurer to execute the agreements on behalf of the city.
Second.
Councilman Stelgrave, supported by Councilman Lamore. Item 4053, the consideration of the license agreement with Andre Satilli. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Steelgrave? Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk?
The next item is item 4045, purchase of automated forestry equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Pastou.
Thank you, thank you, Your Honor. This item here, we have in the current fiscal year 20, well, I shouldn't say current, soon to start 23-24 fiscal year, which is to purchase automated forestry equipment. We talked a little bit about being able to have equipment that will reach heights that our current bucket trucks are unable to do so. And as you know, we've spent a couple $100,000, in excess of a couple $100,000 last couple of years, removing some large trees that our crew in the future will be able to. There's a long lead time, and so we're asking council tonight to just authorize the purchase with D&K Truck Company to purchase the chassis, and then the total purchase is going to be roughly $560,000.
Any questions or comments from council? I will say that this particular piece of equipment, it was about a month or so ago, a private company had it, was taking a tree down here just around the corner from City Hall. And it was impressive to see how it works and how they didn't have to have people up in the buckets. And then over this past weekend, there was 2 trees just near my residence on the corner, significant size tree, and I saw our workers going up there. So this is not only a great piece of equipment, I think safety and looking out for our employees, but also the residents as well, and to take quicker action. This is a great purchase. I know we talked about it in capital improvements. I look forward to seeing it come and arrive. So with that, a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion that a cab/chassis be purchased from D&K Truck Company in the amount of $155,828, that a crane attachment be purchased from Versa Lift Midwest Incorporated in the amount of $383,199, that a total of $560,000 be authorized for the purchase to include contingencies, and that the Director of Engineering and Public Services or his designee be authorized to make a formal purchase commitment on behalf of the city with financing to be secured at a later time.
Motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 4045, the purchase of the automated forestry equipment. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Steelgrave?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. If I make a final comment on this, because we go through a process here through the state of Michigan's My Deal. So there's how we post these opportunities that come out. And these particular 2 companies are within Michigan. The D&K Trucking comes out of Lansing, and the VersaLift comes out of Shelby Township. So within I'll just say the region of the Southeast, but also Lansing, and through the many had the opportunity to bid on the process in this fashion. Clerk, next item, please.
Next item is item 4056, consideration of economic wage adjustments.
Stu?
I'm going to have Dr. Everly introduce the next 3 items on the council agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Everly. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. We have, several months ago, we talked about some wage adjustments that were needed, and we set forth in doing that and worked with our Teamster unit first. And so that wage adjustment was made, and that's why the Teamsters is not part of what you're going to be considering tonight. So in moving forward and working with our union leadership across the remaining 5 unions, we do have a wage adjustment that you have in front of you for consideration. There was already a 2% wage adjustment built into every collective bargaining agreement. And so what this agreement does, this MOU, it adds 3% in addition to that 2%. So that would mean effective July 1st, the employees in these respective units would receive a 5% increase.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Everly? Councilman Lamore.
More for the attorney on my behalf, because I have a relation within the POAM. Is this something I should be voting on, or should I abstain?
Your Honor, in this case, I don't have any problem with the potential for an abstention here, given that there's a financial impact for a family member for the council member. So in this case, I would say encourage, if he's asking for the right to abstain, that council would authorize that under our past practices.
Thank you.
Okay. So, any questions or comments from the council regarding that? Because there's a request from a council member. If there's not, we'll move forward. And I would just make a comment before I take a motion. Probably should not make motions either regarding this item. But so I think back when we started having the conversation regarding wages and recognizing what's going on in the marketplace for municipal employees. It's been several months ago we met and had the conversation as we were already in the process and recognized within our Teamsters, while we have our pay structure that has served well, we recognize how quickly that changed, and to step in and do that prior to just waiting to the end of the contract, which should not have been favorable for anybody, plus delivery of service. So I just want to give my thanks to Dr. Everly and the members of the staff that participated in this, and of course, administration, Mr. Pastu, to bring these together, to bring us back where we are in a place, and understanding that things change sometimes during a contract. So I appreciate bringing this forward, and think it's something we should support. But with that, if there's not any other comments, a motion, please. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to approve the economic wage adjustment as presented and authorize the administration to enter into the attached memorandums of understandings with COMEA 1, COMEA 2, COAM, command officers, POAM, public safety officers, and the IAFF.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Germaini, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 4056, the economic wage adjustments as stated.
Your Honor, I may just, if Councilman Lamore is going to ask to abstain from that, pursuant to the charter, there should be a motion made to excuse him from voting on that, which, again, as I said, I would support, and I don't want to.
Yep, understand.
Yep, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor, but before we take that vote, can we take an additional motion, correct, or not? Yes.
So it's separate? Or can it be included?
So I would handle that as a separate procedural item, leaving I'll say for purposes of procedure, holding on the motion that's on the table to allow just the procedural motion as to Councilman Lamore's voting or not voting on the motion that is presently on the table.
That's correct. So what we're looking for is the council to recognize that there's a request from a council member to abstain for the voting for the purposes of the state. So I'm going to look to Councilman Felder.
I'd make a motion that Councilman Lamore be allowed to recuse himself on this matter.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave, that regarding the request to abstain from voting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Stilgrave? Germaini? Mayor Clark?
Yes. And we have a motion on the floor that was on hold from Councilwoman Germaini and seconded by Councilwoman Stilgrave to approve the 4056 economic wage adjustments as presented. Any other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore?
Abstain.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Stilgrave? Germaini?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, please, Clerk.
The next item is item 4058, resolution declaring Juneteenth as a city holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu, or Dr. Everly.
Thank you. So at our last council meeting, there was some conversation regarding the continuation of some action that had been discussed over the past couple of years regarding Juneteenth being a city holiday. So you have before you a resolution that does three things. It does declare Juneteenth a city holiday. It further does move the city council workshop and meeting that was scheduled on that day. And then it authorizes me to enter into some conversations with those 6 bargaining units, because the declaration of holidays has to be spelled out in a contract, and we would use the MOU process to expedite that with those bargaining units. We have just to note, I have had some informal conversations with them, and I do not foresee a problem in the execution of those MOUs.
Questions from council? So I'll just say I appreciate Dr. Everly and the administration again of putting this in this fashion where there's really three components to it, rather than just making a motion to have the declaration for the city holiday, because it does have other impacts and right through the next meeting in June, which we have to put, I think as it says in here in the item, the date of in the resolution fact sheet, it would move to Tuesday, June 20th. Then the last part is the contractual side of it. You could just change it, but then there's got to be discussion within the contracts we have, discussion with the council of how many days we have for holidays, what they are, because I think there's going to be continuation of discussion on holidays as they fall on some traditional days that may merit the conversation when they have the opportunity. So I support the fact we're moving forward. We can do it within the existing contract, give the administration, Dr. Everly, and Human Resources the opportunity to have that dialogue and come back to us. Councilman Moore.
Yeah, I have one question regarding the exact date. Should we mention that it is June 19th?
I believe that is, your motion that you have before you, certainly that's council's prerogative.
Okay.
The motion you have before you is to accept the resolution, and I'm just looking at that one more time here. It does state June 19th in the resolution.
Oh, okay, very good. That's good.
Other comments? Councilwoman Stilgrave.
I have no comment. I was just going to make the motion.
Please do.
Move to adopt the resolution declaring Juneteenth as the official city holiday.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Stilgrave, supported by Councilwoman Moore on item 4058, the resolution declaring Juneteenth as a city holiday. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore? Yes. Felder?
Yes.
Whitman? Yes. Stilgrave?
Yes.
Germaine? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes. I don't know if there's any other items here, but, okay, we have one, next item, please.
The next item is item 4062, City Manager Offboarding and Separation Agreement.
Dr. Everly.
And I don't remember
And we
what I
do
was
have
going to
one
say.
more, we do have another item after this that came from consent, but we could just, no, we can't just move forward. Dr. Everly, thank you.
Back in December, we started on a journey with our city manager selection process, and we kept going back to the phases that we had laid out as our roadmap, and we are to the last phase of that process, the last component of the last phase, and that is to present to council the offboarding and separation agreement of our current city manager, Vince Pastou. So you have before you in hard copy and have reviewed the agreement, some highlights that it takes into account all of the time off that Vince has already accrued and positions it with his cooperation, positions it in a way that really slopes the offboarding and the onboarding. And Mr. Robinson was delighted to hear about Mr. Pastou's willingness to do that. It also does extend, as you know, Mr. Pastou thought Friday would be his last official day as city manager and thought that this would be his last city council meeting. But it also slopes that he will have one more meeting with us. So, and I think he said something, how many meetings have you?
It's over 1,000.
Yeah, in his career. So we bring before you an agreement that has been thoroughly reviewed by Dykema Gossett, and certainly I could answer any questions.
I have a quick question because as we received our I'll say the first packet on the separation agreement, and just looking at it quickly because we received a copy this evening as well. The content hasn't changed. It was just the formatting of the item that was first put out. Is that correct?
That's correct. There have been no content changes
I
whatsoever.
was trying to go through it quickly and I didn't see any, but I wanted to make sure that from the printout from before to this is the same content. Thank you.
That's correct.
Any questions from council?
Your Honor, I'll make a motion. to approve the city manager offboarding and separation agreement.
By Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave. The city manager, item 4062, city manager offboarding and separation agreement. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore? Yes. Felder? Yes. Whitman? Yes. Stilgrave?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Clerk, I think we have another item.
We do. So this was from the consent agenda, and it involves the approval of the minutes from the May 1st regular meeting. They are in need of some correction. If you don't mind, I'd like to just go through it.
I'll correct myself, we have two items.
We do have
I
two
said
items,
one.
yes.
Yes, please start with the minutes, please.
So item 4024 was the public hearing on nuisance drug property 208 East 7th Street. The content of the minutes with regard to what happened during that public hearing is correct. It's just, unfortunately, there were three places within that description of the public hearing where 208 East 2nd Street was used rather than 208 East 7th Street as the reference. So we just need to make a motion instructing the clerk's office to amend those minutes from 208 East 2nd Street to the proper 208 East 7th Street.
Any questions from council on the item? Okay. Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to allow the clerk treasurer to amend the minutes to say 208 East 7th Street versus 208 East 2nd Street on item 4024. Is that enough?
Second.
Councilwoman Jermaine, supported by Councilman Lamore, to amend the minutes from the council meeting from the May 1st, 2023. And I'll say to accept. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore? Yes. Felder? Yes. Whitman? Yes. Stilgrave?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
All right. And the next item is item 4044, which was on the consent agenda that was pulled, traffic committee minutes from 4/26/2023 meeting.
Thank you. Sir, you asked to have this item pulled. Your name, please, and
Yeah, my name is Dean Patton. I live at 20 West Grove Street. And I got to say before, I'm going to try to take less than 3 minutes of your time, but before I begin, I want to say I'm very impressed with all of you. You're all very, very smart and you do some really good work here. And I want to thank Mayor Robert Clark for keeping me in check with the rules and the procedures because I do not know what I'm doing. I'm just bumping into walls. And then before I do anything more, I want to thank my city council representative, Councilwoman Michelle Germaini, because she's the first person I made contact with. And it's been quite a procedure and a lot of different meetings. But if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even got this far. But I'm here today. What I'm trying to do is make a petition to make Grove Street between Monroe and St. Mary's, which I am the only legal resident on this street. My front door is on this street. My address is Grove. There's no other residents that have that Grove address on this street. There's just one little section area where it's parking. I want it to be no parking. There's been a petition there's actually 4 people that can vote. Out of the 4, only 3 voted. And there's 2 that don't want the parking. That's me and my neighbor. Now, my neighbor's biggest issue is because there's a safety hazard of cars that come around from St. Mary's going down Grove, heading to Monroe Street. Because that 1 or 2 cars there, they're blocking it. And I believe I sent Mr. Patrick Lewis a video that I think he forwarded to some of you. That happens quite often. Although remember from the last meeting, the officer said that there's no real traffic accidents. It's not, he said it's low. So I don't know if that means there's just 1 a year or there's none. I don't know. I know I haven't seen any. But if you eliminated that parking of that spot, there would be more of a flow. Because right now, when they park at that corner, the traffic is impeded and it causes congestions. People wait behind that 1 car and they go one behind the other, and then someone comes zipping along thinking those cars are parked there when they're actually waiting to go around. So that's the safety issue. Mr. Patrick Lewis, he did point out where having parked cars on the street slows down traffic. And that was one of the other the guy that's against the issue, he made that point too. Now, in fact, that is true. I'll agree with that 100%. But between St. Mary's and Monroe Street, you can drive it in 8 to 10 seconds. I counted repeatedly cars. It took them that long to get to one side from the other. And since there's only parking on the one corner for the distance of the 1.5 house, all the other street, there's no parking on that side entirely, and there's no parking on this side entirely. So removing that parking is not gonna cause people to go faster. At least I don't think so. I don't think speeding is an issue. I think nowadays people are more calmer for some reason. Maybe it's because we're getting to be better people, I don't know. I don't know what else to say, but this is an improvement of that one area. I'm bringing it to you because I cannot make this change. Only you can. Only you can make Monroe a better place. And this is one small place that I'm asking you to consider to take away that parking. Now, besides that one safety issue, I have a problem with people parking there that shouldn't be parking there, and I think they're abusing it. And I think we've sent evidence that hopefully you've seen, so I won't get into it because it's not pretty. But if anybody at this point wants to ask questions, I'll let it go. If I presented it good enough, does anybody want to ask me anything? Anything? My shoe size?
Well, I'll make a comment because you're right on the 3 minutes, which is excellent. You must have prepared. So I just want to review with the council. Again, this went to the traffic committee. I think we all received the video, received the information, know what it's about. Just to reinforce what, so I shouldn't say it. So you know, it was in our minutes from the traffic committee on this particular item. There was a motion, a second, to take no action on this request, which Mr. Patton was asking for the parking to be removed. So at this point, it comes to council to see if there's any appetite to take other action, what's presented, or to ask any additional items from administration. I know Mr. Pastu will probably have a comment, so we'll just hold tight for a second. Mr. Pastu.
Yeah, just for tonight, and again, knowing Mr. Patton was going to be here, but also because of the bike lane, I'd asked Mr. Lewis to separate those items. Typically, when the minutes are approved, there's either a traffic control order, of which there's nothing in here tonight. So if there's any inclination on the part of the council to consider Mr. Patton's request, it would have to come back at another meeting with a traffic control order for your consideration.
Thank you for the clarification, because we could just say change it because it does require a traffic control order for the council to make motions and accept, and it has to be done through the engineer, because there's going to be specific about streets and distance and direction of north or south, east or west, and so all those things are important to it. So at this point, it's if council has any interest in I guess pursuing that. If not,
That was a question.
yeah, Councilman Jermaine.
The person or persons that park on that street right there, are they renters? Do they have access to a driveway?
The majority of the people that are causing the problems are not, I believe, the residents on St. Mary's. And what they've been doing, they've been parking there at night and they drink and then they go home. And I repeatedly call the police on them, but I don't want to press charges because I want to ride my bike around in the summer, and I don't want to have to look at my neighbor.
So you're asking,
Eliminate
hold on,
the-
Mr. Patton, you're asking a question for something specific,
Yeah.
not in generality. So hold on. So Mr. Lewis is here. I don't know that we've identified which cars are parking there, where they're coming from. I can say they're just from some of the video and some of the information and the conversation at the traffic committee. It's residents that live within the streets and ability to park on a public street. So that'd be the answer.
But they're not residents of Grove.
The residents of the city.
Yes.
And everybody can park on any road in the city, and you don't have to even be a resident to park on the public
Right.
space. Other comments from council members? Thank you, Mr. Patton. I'll see if there's any follow-up or not. Seeing none. I see no action. Clerk, next item, please.
I have no further items this evening, Your Honor.
Hunter?
Councilman Lamore, I'm sorry, Mr. Buzz maybe has a better.
We were
yeah.
just asking if you just make a motion to approve the minutes of the Traffic
Oh,
and
that's true.
Safety Board.
Yeah, we got to approve the minutes. Thank you.
Was that it?
We need to do that. Because we
Your Honor, I'll
pulled an
make the
item
motion.
off the consent.
Your Honor, I'll make the motion that City Council place on file the minutes from April 26, 2023 Mayor's Traffic Committee meeting.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine to accept the traffic minutes from the date stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Lamore? Yes. Felder? Yes. Whitman? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Germaine? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buds, for that. Clerk, next item.
Still have no further items.
Okay, so it's council comments, that's right. So council comments, it's May, so Councilman Lamore, first comments.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just want to pass this along in case anyone in the city did not know this. My condolences go along to the Wilhelm family on the loss of James Wilhelm. He was a past city manager here at the city of Monroe. I believe he served here right around 19 years as city manager. I could be wrong on that assessment, but I think I'm pretty close. He was a very dedicated individual. He was also a veteran, a war veteran, just a really great guy, endured quite a bit during his life and did a great job here with the city. Just wanted to pass that along. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. This past Thursday, I had the opportunity to walk in the graduation ceremony for this class of Leadership Monroe. And I know that I had a wonderful time dealing with, interacting with one of the city's employees, Captain Aaron Ogens, who is here this evening, who also graduated as part of that class. And I just wanted to recognize Captain Ogens for this accomplishment and also for his service to the city. That's all I have.
Are you saying it's the best class that ever went through?
Certainly is. You put up a tough fight, sir, but I think we got you on this one.
That is a standard practice if you graduate from Leadership Monroe that you have the best class. And you'll be banter about that. So Councilwoman Whitman, comments?
The only comment I have is that I'm really happy with the direction that we're going and the changes that we're making, and Monroe will constantly continue to improve. So that's all of my comments.
Thank you.
Happy belated Mother's Day, but I don't see any, too many women that didn't get the message. So.
Here they all serve on council. So Councilwoman Stilgrave.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to first of all start by saying thank you to Brian and Barry for the presentation that they did, and to also welcome the new dive bar that just opened up a couple days ago. And outside of that, no further.
Councilwoman Germaine.
Thank you. I also want to congratulate Brian and Barry for their award. Well deserved. Good job as always. And I'm very excited about our telegraph corridor, the purchase of those properties, and moving forward on something that seems like it's been stagnant forever in my mind. I'm very, very happy about that. Thank you for all your work, Mark. And I was going to mention something about Vince, but we have him for one more meeting, so I'll save it till then.
No, so thank you. I just a brief comment first. Always think about activities that are coming up. This Saturday, May 20th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the River Race National Battlefield Park muster and encampment. They always have activities and events to attend. If you have the opportunity, please stop by the park, go inside and see the significant changes in the visitor and education centers that continues to grow and have new activities inside, but this will be outside, and bring your families as well. It's a good time to stop and just see the growth, but also interact with all those volunteers that come out and want to help tell our community's history as well. Also, I want to give thanks to the Commission on the Environment, of course, the chairperson and vice chair that are here, but all the members, and Councilman Felder sits on the Commission on Environment as well. The great work's done by many boards and commissions, all our volunteers, but time and again, Cody seems to be able to find some really neat initiatives, grant funding. Thanks for that. And I look forward to the river cleanup again, August 12th. never too soon to say when that is, because it's such a great event. I think tonight's agenda was quite lengthy, but when you look at the substance and the information, there's a lot of important items there. It kind of goes to Councilwoman Whitman's comment about the direction and the moving forward and where we are and where we're going. So there's these are important items, and they just don't happen overnight. I think of some of the development projects here and leadership from our Economic Community Development Director, Mr. Cochran, and now Mr. Vanasacker, who is here today. And then we'll have an opportunity to get to see Amy Zarand here at a future presentation to council. But those plans that we did before is why we do them, because now we have the opportunity foundation. That's how that's how North Telegraph on Lazy Boy property came to be. And that's how we got to where we're having the South Telegraph part of our community in the purchase and obtaining those buildings. But really now the fun begins to how do we develop it and change both ends of our community on a commercial corridor for improvements for our residents and visitors. So I'll stop there. Clerk Treasurer LaVoy.
I just have one comment this evening. I wanted to thank the team of the Clerk Treasurer's Office. We had an election a couple weeks ago now, and it went really well. It was a small election, but as I mentioned before, the team has to prepare for it as if it's the largest election we've ever had. So I appreciate that, and to all the election inspectors that came out, they did an exceptional job once again, and everything balanced at the end of the night. And so we move forward now. I've begun working on the 23 November election, but also on the 24 election, and I'll be bringing some of those items to council to introduce to the public as well as council members as we move forward through the process. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple items. One is just to let everybody know that about a little over a year ago, the city entered into an agreement with the Michigan Fitness Foundation and MDOT regarding a pedestrian safety education awareness kind of pilot project. And at this point in time, there is a survey out there that you can find it on the city website as well as on our Facebook page, Instagram, that will provide valuable feedback for this program here. It's open through May 29th. But again, part of it is I think just an awareness of understanding pedestrian safety and what can be done going forward. They'll use this information to help an awareness program that could be tailored for our community. So it's important for everyone to provide, to address the survey and provide that feedback for the community. So the other thing with it is there's a lot of stuff on the agenda tonight. I don't know where to start other than to say thanks for a lot of folks. I look at the economic wage adjustment, certainly greatly appreciative of the work that Dr. Everly had done with the Teamsters as well as the other 5 bargaining units. But I also can't go without saying my appreciation of putting Mr. Sell through a horrible budget process and trying to balance it out, and not just for this year, but the succeeding 5 years as well. A lot of going around, and one of the things, given all the changes out there, I don't normally do this, but I had, Mr. Sell, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Buds, and I said, okay, there's 4 holes I got to fill in this budget, and literally in an hour, we figured out how we're going to do it, of which one of them was that South Telegraph project. And again, great teamwork. I can't be happier with the folks I work with, and I think tonight's kind of just a recognition of all the items that you had before that came before you tonight was a function of a great team. And I'm very blessed to work with these folks. And that doesn't even extend out yet to Barry and Brian and Patrick and everybody I work with. I've been very fortunate, not only with the folks internally, but a lot of our volunteers in the community. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. Okay, at this time, citizens' comments. Any comments from those present here this evening? If you wish to make comments, just mindful of the chamber is hold on one second, is 3 minutes. And please state your name and jurisdiction of residence.
Dean Patton, I live at 20 West
Well,
Grove.
in the microphone, please. Thank you.
Dean Patton, I live at 20 West Grove Street. precinct 4. I'm not sure on what I did here tonight or what my next move is. Is it the whole thing been dropped or does it go forward?
Well, Mr. Pastor?
Well, ultimately, that may be a council decision whether you want to entertain a traffic control order or not. The Traffic and Safety Committee recommended not. And again, what you had in front of you was just approval of the minutes of the meeting. There was no traffic control order, which typically will accompany your meeting if there is an action on the part of our recommendation from the Traffic Control Committee. Council, in a future work session or whatever, would say, like to put it on there, if that's up to you, whether you want to entertain it or not. But at this point, there's no action item coming from administration.
Correct. So then it goes back to Mr. Patton, and I'm looking at Clerk Lavoy as well as Mr. Buds. Residents have other alternatives if they wish to implement policy, and we'll start with Mr. Buds. What a resident may choose to do regarding ordinance changes or.
Yeah, so I would say from my perspective, certainly council can make the decision to move forward with any traffic control orders. What has been proposed, I will say the traffic committee didn't take any action on that. So all today was putting forth the minutes of that, I'll say, decision of that body. Certainly there are other means, and I can talk with Mr. Patton about those type of things, but there are certainly ways in which citizens can put forth ordinances or other changes before city council for consideration.
Understand?
No, sorry.
Mr. Budd said he'll chat with you if you have an interest of ways in which you may have
Okay.
opportunity individually if you wish to do so. Just may want to chat with him for at least exchange a number. So at convenience, you can have a conversation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening? Mr. Cochran.
I'm sorry, I said earlier you wouldn't hear from me anymore, but I just wanted to make a couple announcements I thought both you and the community may find helpful. Our busy season in the parks is ramping up this week with the first summer concert series concert being this Thursday at 7 p.m. The summer concert series this year being presented by Monroe Community Credit Union for the first time. This year we've got the Monroe High School Choirs presenting this week at 7 p.m. and then every week now through the end of July, we've got a concert lined up with a couple in August as well. So once again, 7 p.m. St. Mary's Park every Thursday. The other opportunity is this Friday at the River Raisin National Battlefield Education Center, rescheduled from March due to weather, but the Minions, The Rise of the Gru, the family film that we've got this Friday starting at 6:15 at the battlefield. It's free. We did require RSVPs, but some folks who couldn't attend or who could attend in March can attend this Friday. So if you're interested, you can sign up on the city's website for that in partnership with the Great Start Collaborative and the Monroe Family YMCA have some fun family activities and concessions before the movie begins at 7. And then also this week, the schedule for Tot Lot was released beginning June 19th through July 28th, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 12:30 at Boyd Park, Greenwood Park, Labor Park, Munson Park, Manor Park, and new this year is St. Mary's Park. So Tot Lot's kicking off about a month from now. So just wanted to announce that.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Councilman.
I just had one question regarding the concert series. Is there rain out dates for any of these, or are they just, if they're rained out, they're rained out? That's
yeah,
it.
if they're rained out, they're rained out.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Just a follow-up to his comment, because it keeps going back to our earlier conversation, this question, what's the kiosk and what does it really provide, and is it a sign or what is it? I say that humorously because that's where you can find information downtown as well. It's used for information. The concert in the parks has a poster in there that tells you when those are going on. And the Downtown Monroe Business Network, the DMBN, also has their list of activities they're doing throughout the summer. So besides on the electronic messaging, there's also signs downtown. So.
Lastly, if I may, I just wanted to give credit to Amy Mason of our recreation staff for organizing the whole concert series, the family movies. I know one of council's goals has been increasing special events, especially family events, and so she's done a bang-up job all winter long getting these set for the summertime. Last but not least, a feather in her cap is she quadrupled our sponsorship budget this year by revamping the sponsorship program, quadrupling the amount that we've been brought in. So we've been able to add some more concerts, including the return of Jim Gill, which is a children's concert that'll happen in July. So just wanted to give her credit for all of her hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Blake Howell. I spoke out at a previous city council meeting about the harmful health effects of cell phone towers. What I forgot to mention is that these harmful health effects are reduced the further you are away from the cell phone towers. These telecommunications companies are using cell phone towers to deliberately hurt and kill people, believe it or not, especially certain people, for instance, people who are most responsible for polluting the environment. This is proven conclusively by the fact that on expressways, every mile or so, there are cell phone towers very, very close to expressways, even though the cell phone tower signals transmit about 30 miles. Now these companies are putting small cell towers on like every other streetlight pole or utility pole, so that pretty much everyone would always be very close to a cell phone tower, even though there are thousands of peer-reviewed scientific studies proving that cell phone towers are hazardous to our health and well-being. So I'm wondering if you will please stop these companies from putting up these small cell phone towers. Have you ever been approached by Verizon or AT&T about putting up these small cell towers on public utility poles, for instance, on like every other streetlight pole? Is that something?
Like, this is your time to speak with us. It's not necessarily a dialogue or a debate. So I can tell you it has in the past, but that was years ago. But if you have further comments, continue.
Okay. But are there any current plans to put up these small cell towers?
Not that I'm aware of. Not the council is.
Okay, well, and also hopefully we can stop the large cell phone towers from being a very dangerous distance away from people. The same people who control these telecommunications companies are also the same people who control most of the big tech companies, which are so obviously to me trying to manipulate what we believe. So I'd like to give you all copies of a letter I wrote, which has important information, including URLs for a few reference videos about cell phone towers and the danger of them. That'll be it for me. Thank you. Could I please pass these out to you?
Please give them to the clerk before you depart, and she'll see that you get disseminated to each of the council members. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from those present here this evening? Further comments? Seeing none, a motion will be in order.
Your Honor, I just have one last comment, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I just want to wish my daughter congratulations. That's the last in my line to graduate from college this past weekend, and I almost completely forgot about it, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Felder to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Grave? Germaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you all this evening.